and more science. An awakening experience, we hope, for all ages. Please note that the views, opinions, and services expressed or offered by guest lecturers are those of the lecturers and do not necessarily reflect the official policy or position of the House of Reawakening Minds. And we would like to welcome all of you and welcome our esteemed lecturer, National Grand Sheik Taj Tarik Bey. Let's receive him, please. And happy holy day, Moors.
Yes, we were having a conversation actually earlier this morning.
It's up there. It's on the stage. It's up there. It's on the stage.
What's on the stage?
It's on the stage.
Oh, all right. I just wanted to bring this. Yeah.
That's not it, but that's okay. Go ahead.
I forgot. I was asking Tam if she had gotten it. And we had chose this as a subject matter. And almost midnight is a metaphor implying late. One of the things that we recognize, and this is back to the tieback. Remember we were talking earlier and showed you how one thing leads to another. Now, when I was in doing a class in New York at the theater years ago, a few of the brothers from IAT actually came to the class, and it was two brothers and a woman that also came from Ecuador, and they brought a message from me from the diplomat ambassador from Ecuador. You know, they were taking some information back. But generally, this article was given to me by a brother from IET. And when we were talking earlier about how did we here in the West become known as Indians, you know, and this is why it's important for people to know the history, because it's not an unknown history. Problem that we have, and one of the reasons why we chose the issue of subject matter before or almost midnight, is that because most of the people are out of the culture, they have lost a cognizance of how to read nature or how to even recognize the vibrations of the earth when she's talking to you. And I make no judgment on us as single unit energies, or some people would say individuals. I'll say single unit energies. I'll make no judgment because we all design our fate. It knows we choose. Those who know that man makes no mistake. Man makes choices that are often untoward by free will. When he don't get the sandwiches that he wants, then he makes the excuse of making a mistake. But truthfully, the beings don't make mistakes. It's kind of a misused word, all right? So the issue of almost midnight is to imply that the people not being prepared for the cycles that we're already into, this Aquarian cycle, the energy that we're under, say with Jupiter and Uranus, and the more density of the atmosphere of what we call the spatial world or the spatial universe. We like to kind of pretend that we don't exactly understand this when inside we actually do. And we're kind of in this denial of taking responsibility. That's why I chose that. Meaning that By us perpetrating the fraud upon the generations that come, we're actually sacrificing them. And to protect, or to try to protect the images of the multiplicity or multiplicities of institutions and organizations with alphabet soup names that supposedly deal with the human problems on the planet, when the people really know that all of them, almost all of them, 90% of them are parasites and parasitic and have no intentions of curing anything concerning the human family. So this is really an appeal to the spirit man of humanity to take heed on what in their hearts they already know, that they're late to the hour. However, also understanding, and we spoke about this earlier, that scholars know in general that the Maghreb is the Western Hemisphere, and it's under European colonial occupation. That's what's wrong with the planet. Stop pretending that you don't know that. Are we clear? Established fact. North America, Central America, South America, and the islands is not India, and we're not Indians. Tamara, this article was given to me by one of the Maroons from the hills of Haiti. And those who know that Haiti, or what they'll call Haiti, where they divided the land under the Spanish Inquisition and called it Hispaniola, and they called Dominica. They also called one of the other islands Dominica, and they called this sectioning of Haiti Dominican. It's not, it's still Haiti, there's still Arawak and Carib Moors, right? Now, so in the history, to kind of hide it, they'll refer to those who didn't go along with the Constantinian operations, or what they would call the Christian conquest. Keep in mind, we're not talking spirituality, we're talking with the actual politics. When they refer to the European Christians conquering the Moors and coming to the Western Hemisphere, they're really Constantinians using the name Christians. In other words, they're battling under the name Christianity, they're really Constantinians. Are we clear? So they started calling the people Indians because they were trying to take over Sindh, or what is Hindustan, dealing with the spice trade, the gold, silver, and spices, or the trade to the Moors. Are we clear? Now, they could not go across the Red Sea because of Talcott, and that is that rock, what they call Gibra Atarik. Gibra Atarik, they'll call the Rock of Gibraltar, which means the mountain or the hill of Tariq, the Moorish general. And so they were planning on going around the Cape of South Asia, which they call Tamari now, or South Africa, or they call Africa. That's actually Asia Salt, or South Asia. All right? Now, when you go into the log records or shipping records of Portugal, Spain, and Britain, etc., when they're talking about the European so-called discoverers, and they talk about Cristoforo Colombo as one, they'll say Cristoforo Colombo. You'll see that a Moor named Pedro navigated the Nino. And whereas they were seeking to go to Hindustan, which the Moors renamed Hindustan, is actually Sindh. All right? That's S-I-N-D-H, Sindh. And a little over 2,000 years ago, they renamed it Hindustan. And the Europeans wanted to take over the spice trades of the Moors. That was the intention of Colombo's voyages for the Queen. Isabella and Ferdinand, after they merged their kingdoms. They merged their kingdoms, and that's Aragon, is for your research, Aragon and Castile. All right, and they merged them, and after the fall of the Red House, or the Alhambra, they renamed Al-Andalus, Spain. Are we clear? So when they go into history, and they talk, and they'll write books about the Moors in Spain, it's kind of a twisted falsehood, because when the Moors ruled, it wasn't Spain, it was Al-Andalus. It was called Spain after the defeat of the Moors, are we clear? So that must be put in context so that you have a better and more proper view of real history. But anyway, the brother, who's from many generations of the Maroons in the hills of Haiti, and also in Borican, or that they call Puerto Rico. There's no such thing as Puerto Rico as Borican, San Juan. The Europeans renamed it because, keep in mind, in the culture of the Asiatics of the Maghreb, the wealth was maintained through the feminine principle, just like in ancient Asia and Africa, or we clear as matriarchies. Doesn't mean that we, as sons, didn't do projected things. Doesn't mean that we didn't act as protectors, etc., but the societies are matriarchies until Roman conquest. Or that must be understood so you can understand the culture. And so, like a lot of the family wealth would be represented with gold and platinum and silver, and things like that, and they would wear it on their necks and their arms, and it would be banded, meaning that it wasn't like where you take it off. You know what I mean? You didn't take it off. And so the Europeans would cut a lot of the women's heads off and their arms off to steal the gold. And they would send back to Portugal and to Al-Andalus, which they call Spain, and to the Inquisition operatives going up to the Popes of Rome and the bishopric, that damn, this is a rich port. And this is how that particular island got the name Puerto Rico, which means rich port. It's not the people, and there's no such thing as Puerto Ricans. All right, they're Taino and Arawak Moors, and the area is Caribs. All right, so they'll signify, like, well, they'll make movies like Pirates of the Caribbean, and then they'll show the pirates having dreadlocks and stuff like that. You know, and the first of the Caribs and the Arawak and Taino tribes of Moors of the islands of Central Almarac and Americana, they called us Indians. And because their intention was to take over Madagascar and Hindustan. And Pedro navigated the ships to the islands and not to send them. And so they called the first of us, that would you be dealing with most of the Asiatics of Haiti, Borican, San Juan, what they call Dominica, and they call it Hispaniola, etc. Indians of the West. That's how the term West Indies came to be tagged on the Moors of the West. Are we clear? However, we're not Indians. This ain't India, and neither is Sindh, India. That's Hindustan. Are we clear? So let's get that clear, that the Western Hemisphere is not India. And there's no damn such thing as Native Americans. That was made up by European sociologists in the 30s. They keep on making new tags to get the people to agree to the tags. And when you agree to the tags, you lose your estate. Are we clear? Are we clear? Now, the issue is that the people are not aware of the general functions of nom de guerre, what are called war names. Why did the German, Dutch, Europeans change the names of the lands and the names of the people? They did that to steal the land under what they call, to this very day, and is used in court cases, and I know you know law, doctrine of discovery. When you look in the land thefts, even up to this day, you look into the records, whereas the Aboriginal people keep losing case arguments in relationship to the lands that's been in their families for generations, it's under the doctrine of discovery. Now, one of the keys as to how this is done is where they, in their communications with the people, if they see that the people agree to be Negroes, blacks, coloreds, or Indians, then that comes under the doctrine of discovery, and it comes under their jurisdiction. How does it come under their jurisdiction? Because they made these names up. And even by default copyright, if you accept a name that's not of the pedigree, you're out of the inherited right of heirship. It's very, very simple. This stuff is not complicated. It's very, very simple. You know, and this is why you see the promotion of the idea of people gaining their rights or gaining some treaty rights if they agree to be Indians. You see, that's another game that's played. But you also know that none of the so-called Indian treaties have been honored. All clear? Not one. All right? Because we're Indians. However, what occurs is, and this is the trick, by agreeing to be any of these brands and tags of nom de guerre, it brings one under what is called the Bureau of Indian Affairs, BIA. And logically, that gives jurisdiction. And if you notice that all of the Asiatics of the West that agreed to be Indians, and then they thought they were going to get some kind of sovereign operative rights, and they started building casinos and all this kind of stuff. It's like the computer. And they started building casinos and all of this stuff and building what they thought was monetary security in the reservations. The Europeans let them build all these communities and casinos, right? And they let them run for about 10 years, and after they started really generating finance, then they just took them over.
I drove around with a lot.
Because it's BS, it's a game. It's a game. See, because, and this is back to what you were talking about earlier when you were talking about the Dungy case. And that's, of course, those of you who know, that's the case that Lincoln did in 1855, 5 years before he was praetor for the United States Service Corporation. You know, because the issue has always been the status. So, again, as we know, the current events in the political realm relative to the economics is that the nations of the earth in general are caught in this ongoing dilemma of operative and by activities and intent dumping the U.S. corporation treasury bonds. Now, as most of you already know, that the different nations of the earth have already been caught up in the cycle in the last 50 or so years, a little more, of having roughly around 55% of their reserves of financial instruments in private corporate commercial paper known as Federal Reserve notes. And so they're kind of caught in a dilemma because they can be made or broken. All right? Now, under the political reality of the enforcement of unum sanctum operations, which pretty much has been over the generations directed at the descendants of the Moors, who have been branded Negro, black, and colored, etc. That was the major target. They were the major target. now that the nations of the world are dumping or no longer buying U.S. Treasury bonds. Their economic power is collapsing. Are we clear? Because that they've weaponized it. In other words, the world knows that the private commercial paper is a weapon, and it's not money. It never was money. For it was designed to steal the estate of the Moors of the Maghreb over a period of years, meaning everything was not done in what you call one fell swoop. It was done by design in what you call incremental acts. And so the necessitation of a political forum to execute these inquisition operations was necessitated, which you all know, by the Organic Act of Congress 1871, February 2nd. Beginning with the coup d'etat of March the 27th, 1861, which you know as the Sinadiya Action. Also, to understand the current politics is to comprehend the Kansas-Nebraska Act. Please write that down. Kansas-Nebraska Act. I won't get into that because we don't want to get, because any of these subject matters we can get into related but off point. The point of it is the appeal to you is to be active and not passive. Are we clear?
Yeah.
Failure to be active, particularly at this time, really guarantees that a large number of humanity will be exterminated. Meaning the plan is extermination. Now we know that it cannot be stopped. It can be checked or reduced. Are we clear? Law of nature is this. Any living thing or being that goes far off or goes off the path, the vibrational path of purpose of being. Now, in sociology, you can refer to it like this: honor your mothers and your fathers. In common law, the preservation and the activities involving a knowledge and an activity, cultural, commonly and consistently to the ancient traditions and customs of your ancient mothers and fathers from time immemorial, establishes a ground or standing for the enforcement of what is known as the common law. That's in jurisprudence. That's related to the honor of the mothers and fathers. This is why it's important from a political function for branding systems to be instituted, because it takes you out of the honor. If they get you to agree to it, you abandon your estate. That's fact of law. Are we clear? Thus, almost midnight. So, we're dealing with the astrological, cosmological reality of kind of like, and you can do the research, and we won't go into this, but I'll just drop these nitwits out there, where you have like Jupiter and Uranus in relationship to the spiraling behind the sun and the earth, all being sort of like on the same side of their rotation behind the spiraling sun, which creates a pull. And this happens, I think, and you do ephemerides research on this. I think roughly about 420 years in that area. And we're talking about sidereal measurement. All right? So, by fact of nature, you're going to have what you call an oblong pull on the gravitational nature and axis of the Earth. This is operations in nature. Now, in knowledge of your culture, which is cosmology, or study of the universe, you would always time yourself by this because your culture was based on a knowledge of nature and a knowledge of the universe. When our people started following Rome, they started adopting anthropomorphic analysis of the holy books, which actually takes you off key, because that's for children. Are we clear? Then we lost an ephemeris outlook, which is the truth of how the universe works, and the mathematics of the movements and the equinoxes of the sun, which is the true culture, which is the truth of religion. Fact all over the world, until corrupted by Rome. And we've been following Rome, and Rome was planning to exterminate almost midnight. So when you look at Jupiter and Uranus in their orbital path in relationship to the sun, and it's not like a plate line like they told you, it's actually a cone shape, and it's a spiraling behind the sun, which is almost like a ball of nickel and steel going through a denser part of the universe, which removes a lot of the aura of the sun, which allows a lot more UV rays to hit the planet Earth, which is why the sun is whiter than what it used to be yellow. That's that. Now, when we were in our culture, this is common knowledge. Everything is built and prepared accordingly. That our people started following Rome and dogma systems in the name of religion, they've lost in the generations a consciousness of their relationship to nature. There's a price to pay for that. Almost midnight. Now, because, again, like I said, where Jupiter and Uranus in their orbital path are on the same side of the orbital path of the moon and the earth, you've got a pull. So, what does that equate to? That means you're going to get expansion in the earth. There will be a growth in the earth, meaning that the earth will actually start to expand. It will receive more what you call solar dust, or dust from the universe itself. And the core is expanding, which means the earth is going to crack. Doesn't mean it's going to come apart. It will expand, not unlike, like if you put, say, a bottle of water in a closed canister in a refrigerator, freezer, and it expands from top to top. Same thing. So one of the things that the ancient Canaanites and Moabites did, and particularly around the Red River or the Nile, which is the Mississippi. Mississippi will run both ways. According to the Earth's axis, it will actually run up and also run down. So we built mounds on both sides of the river. And one of the things that was common in Asiatic culture is the rule of not living hard on the earth. Meaning understanding that the earth is a living being. So you also understand that she, in cycles, according to the sun's equinoxes, and your mathematical keeping the ephemerides and your culture harmonic with those facts, and you're building accordingly, nature would always, like a mother, look after your care. When you violate those rules, she recognizes neither person or station and will cleanse herself. It's how it works. If you're in disharmony with her, she will cleanse herself of you. Almost midnight. The point that I'm making is by most people not really having an honest and clear comprehension of the books, when you do it before Vedas, the Septuaginta, the Bible, Quran, all of the holy books, that we have a tendency to deal with the anthropomorphic belief angles and not with the ephemerides and universal energies truth of the books, of forces and powers, and their relationship to the activation of the pineal gland, the medulla, and the glandular system of the body, which their activation is called Christing, or the fire, or the ascension, or the anointing of your head with oil, which means the activation of the pineal gland. Or like on her, on Sis's, where she has the jewel right between her eyes right there, where the thalamus comes from the dark side of the brain and terminates right at that point, comprehending what that actually means, the activation of the pineal gland. Now, we'll use that in culture dealing with different statuses, say marital status as one. Some eligible according to where you are, but those are not the original. The original is the activation of the pineal gland. That's what that symbolizes. And so, comprehending that, understanding that, and working with that in harmony with nature is very important for us to get back to those principles of comprehension. So that as nature calls or speaks to us, that we don't need to go through all of this, what you would call artificiality of metaphysical rituals, when it just should be your natural, everyday breathing activity that when nature calls, you just hear her. That when you walk outside and you see the leaves on the trees and different trees, that you know what they're saying because Mother is talking to you. We've lost that by following after Rome. Therefore, almost midnight. Problem. The rulers of the world have maintained secret societies for their own personal protection, because they have maintained a lot of the culture and facts and codified them and tell them in allegorical stories, signs and symbols, then tell the masses that that's the devil's workshop so you don't pay attention to that, with the intention of the masses dismissing certain fundamental divine truths and then suffering the consequences. And they, as jackals, will gather themselves together to feed on the carrion, which is you. And they will say that you consented to it by agreeing to be the tags that they created that takes you out of plane of the state. This is the function of branding. And this is the function of standing. And I was having a conversation with a brother earlier today before I came down here. And it was a brother from another organization. And one of the things that we were discussing, and we never finished it because he had to go and I had to go, was the use or misuse of the connotative linguistics, in the branding system. And I wasn't trying to offend him, but I wasn't letting him get that off. Taking the black brands and taking them back into the ancient Hebrew dynastic. Because we know, and I know all of you know, that there's no such thing as Hebrew. It's Hebrew. And that's not a separate people. And it's not that we're not Hebrew, we are. We are among those who crossed the river before the Atlantis became an ocean. Before Pan moved and Atlantis sunk. Due to the same principle that we're talking about today. If you go back in the Ephemerides scales and calendars, as Ephemerides, you're dealing with the equinoxes of the sun. So you're dealing with what we call the bigger clock of destiny. And so the bigger clock of destiny, which is a common part of our culture, we've lost it. So I'm just saying these things to you, appealing to your common sense, to respect your common sense, and go back to the principles of your ancient mothers and fathers and do that reading. And you will see that when the cocoa plates split or shifted, almost all the time, it's around a period of time where Jupiter and Uranus is on the same side of the orbital plane with the Earth. And if that's not a pattern, show yourself that, prove to yourself that it's not, and you'll prove that it is. So I'm bringing that to your attention because we're in that Jupiter-Uranus cycle on the same side of the orbital plane of the spiral with the Earth. So expect that to take place, or the expansion of the planet. All right, now, you know that we measure chronology, or what you call time, by the transits, mostly, particularly in the contemporary time. Not that we didn't deal with 19 planets before. We know that if you go back a few millennia, our watches had 19 dials. You know that. Well, we're not debating that. But you also know that we have been inactivated. All right, so spiritually, we're not as connected. So we can't read 19 dials like we used to. So we only read 3. You know, so we're reading the sun, we read the moon, and Venus. And that's pretty been in the contemporary millennia of the modern world. Or modern to us is not exactly what people think it is. But we're not talking modern in the sense of the contemporary operations now. So modern to us is a few millennia. You know, to Rome today, they're talking about after George Washington, they call that modern. You know better than that. So I'm appealing to your better sense, to your inner sense, to the spirit man, to go back to the principles of your ancient mothers and fathers. And as you begin to do that, nature herself will heal the wires, the abstract wires of our scattered minds from the anthropomorphic, not wrong, but anthropomorphic contaminations back into the ephemeral relationships of the transits of the sun through these equinoxes. And then look at the greater calendars, or what you would call the greater circles. And I know that you know that because we have not been doing that, we kind of lost ourselves a little bit. You know, and then although we know about it, we've dismissed it in some sense because we've become satisfied to where we are today, to some degree. We know stuff is messed up, but we've become somewhat complacent. However, we must be reminded that nature does not recognize us accepting that position. Nature does not recognize personal station. She operates on equinoctial rules. And so nature is what you may say forgiving, and nature still gives you signals, or can be said on another level, warnings. But if you don't pay attention to her, she's still merciful, she still gives you warnings. So I'm saying almost midnight. Because we must recognize with the greater wheels of the planetary orbital planes, cycles, or what you call epochs, come and they go. And when you come to the end of epochs, there's closings that take place. It always is. Nothing really stops. It recycles, but there's closings. And if certain things that you are sent here to do, because remember, you choose your mother, but you come here with a birthmark. In the physical, it's called a belly button, right? In the abstract or the spiritual, it is called the mathematical wheel, or Ezekiel's wheel. It would be your sun, your moon, and your ascending planets. That would be your trinity. Then you would have your subdivisional angles or angels that deal with the each of those degrees in each one of those corners or gates. In general, you're dealing with the 9 moons or cycles of the moon that governs the womb, or you say the 9 months that you're in your mother's womb. You're dealing with the salts that she builds you with and the phosphates that she builds you with, but you're also dealing with the energy elements on the earth. And you also know that when you're dealing with crystalline structures, and particularly quartz and the energies that are contained in the quartz stones, you also understand why certain of your more ancient buildings were built with granites, which has quartz in it, and other quartz type stones, because they actually hold, carry, and emit energy. These are facts. Therefore, almost midnight. Now, and because we have factually, the Uranian and the Jupiter cycles on the same side of the orbital plane with the Earth at this time, our options of playing around with this information are, the chronology is constricted. In everyday speak, you would say you don't have a lot of time to get this stuff done. That's almost no doubt. So, for those who know the real political operations on the planet, must stop hiding in the shadows and tell humanity the truth. Those who have been holding the truth back for private and personal benefit, I would suggest, by your own free will, that you start telling the truth, knowing that a lot of institutions will collapse that the people believe in. However, those institutions, 90% or more, are parasites. The people who run them are parasites, and the platforms are parasitic. They have not developed humanity spiritually or politically. They've been sucking humanity's blood, and sucking humanity's energies, and sucking humanity's resources, and hiding under the name religion, hiding under the word spirituality. These are known facts. However, you know and I know that it's uncomfortable for a lot of people when you tell that truth. And the truth has become the outside dog, as you might say. And they've gotten comfortable with treating the truth like it's an outside dog. However, fact, with Uranus and Saturn, we're not talking about Uranus and Jupiter, Uranus and Saturn co-ruling the Aquarian constellation cycle at this time. All of those institutions are going to collapse anyway. Almost midnight. Tom, give her the mic. Anyway, again, thank you all for coming out to the House of Reawakening Minds. And I hope we can do some good. I'm uncomfortable, I'm uncomfortable with putting, like say, pressure on people. Everything should be done by free will. So I'm just reminding you, so that's the appeal that I'm making. I just want you to know that, all right? I'm appealing to your divine mind and to your divine senses, to your self-knowledge of self-obligation and self-responsibility. Go ahead, sis.
Islam. A few years ago, you did a lecture on Basel III, and it said that at a certain date, I think March 31st, 2018, it was going to be in compliance, and then they're extending it to March 31st, 2019. But do you know, are you aware, have they done anything with regard to that to have the assets in line with,
Finish what you're saying, because we want to kind of clear up a little bit with everyone what where Basel is, and why the Basel agreement, etc. will continue. Finish up your statement.
All right, so at first they were supposed to have 2% liquid assets. Then the next one was to have 4.5% or something to that degree assets to their generation from those toxic bills, I guess.
So you're bringing up and you're affirming international timelines for correcting unum sanctum operations in relationship to the Federal Reserve Note, or what they would simply be called reset. All right. We'll continue.
All right, so at a given point, I think they're supposed to be up to 6%. But my knowledge from what's going on now, I don't see. Deutsche Bank was the one that had most of the toxic.
Deutsche, which is German in Germany.
Yeah, they had the most of the toxic
derivatives,
and they crashed, and all their management are quitting. Like, you know.
What makes Deutsche unique in relationship to other banks?
It took ground. I don't know. I'm not sure.
All right. It was a dumping ground for the United States Service Corporation to take the trash, dirty bonds and mortgages that were dead already, 206, 207, that later crashed in 208. And so they have more of their alleged reserves in dead mortgages and other instrumentalities and derivatives than any other bank. And so Deutsche falls, the rest of them fall. Meaning that they're interconnected. All right? Basel, Switzerland. A lot of the inquisition operations of the gold and silver that have been robbed from the nations of the earth under the Inquisition operations is located in Switzerland. So while the Vatican has vast stores of gold in the caverns beneath the Vatican that they stole from the Moors, and all conquered nations since the Spanish Inquisition, a lot of their actual transactions or monetary policy is directly from Switzerland. So we're not just talking about Fleet Street, England, Westminster District. So when they talk about Basel compliance, this is more or less where the Constantinians agreed to, let's make this tie, which they don't, it is what they don't admit to. So when we're talking about compliance in relationship to the stolen gold and silver, and we're not just talking about on books, we're talking about off books, is still Inquisition operations. When we forget that, there's a tendency for us to look at the currencies of the different nation states and start debating trade values when it's an overall connected thing. And it's always and only the Inquisition. Whether you're dealing with England, Ireland, France, Germany, the U.S. corporation that they've been misrepresenting as a country, when actually it's a private corporation and a war machine for Fleet Street, England, under the secret treaty of Verona. Always, when we forget that when we talk about the Basel Agreement, it's really, is it not unlike or unrelated to the motu proprio that Pope Francis did in 2013, that they breached, didn't they? So
I'm just trying to line it up with what you're saying. It's 12 hours.
Almost midnight.
Yeah.
So we have them not just dealing with, let's kind of put it this way. Everybody, and that's not exactly like that, but we're talking general. Everybody has gotten spoiled to this cycle of operations, whereas when there was a problem anywhere on the earth, that the United States Service Corporation would send their armies in, kill people, steal their gold, and just do what they want to do in the name of anybody protect their home is an insurgent or a terrorist. In other words, they'll go in your house, steal your stuff. If you fight back, you're a terrorist. When actually they're a terrorist. That's how it works, right? That game is being closed out. And it's being closed out because the 7 cycles of Asia, or the 7 temples which are in Asia, that's represented in the book of Revelation of Septuaginta, or the Bible, are starting to unite. And you may call that the uniting of Asia. Whether they're doing it by moral charge, astrological dispensation, which they have no choice, or their keisters getting kicked and they're tired of it, the fact that that's what's taking place on the planet is true. Almost midnight. People who are not aware of the relationship, fact, of cosmological equinoxes of the sun and what takes place on this planet are less prepared to deal with what we might call reality, and are less prepared to protect and defend themselves or to appeal to Mother Nature, Allah, the feminine principle of the cosmic mother, for protection. They don't need to appeal to her, they need to do right. She will do it without you asking. For we sought not her, she sought us. Coming from the east, even unto the west, seeking her lost sheep. But we chose to follow Rome. Almost midnight. Now, by us losing a consciousness of how to read the energy, the vibration, just simply in air, and the trees, and to start taking the anthropomorphic views of the dispensation of the books, we actually got lost in our own BS. And when you deal with the cycles of the equinoxes of the sun, she doesn't sit around and keep waiting for us to dump these belief systems and start dealing with truth of nature. Just because we call these belief systems religion, and they're not, and we refuse to accept that the masses don't get religion, never have been given religion. You know what I mean? And so that's a choice. Whosoever will, let them hear. Whosoever will, let them come. Meaning that we still have to get to the point of stop playing victim and start taking responsibility, and that our estate is at stake while we're playing belief games. Nature, meaning that as we see right now, and you look at the trees, right? We see the trees getting their amber colors. So we know that the autumnal equinox, according to the cycles of the planets, is upon us. So, cool. We still wear like clothes, but in a few minutes, it could be overnight. And then it takes all hot air away. We're pulling the lungs and stuff. It's understanding how things work. You know, it's not hostile to us. You know, we gave up the culture following belief systems, not recognizing that we're in a dangerous situation now. It's also reflected in the politics on the planet, not just in one particular area. Those who are cognate, it's uncomfortable, but mentally and thus spiritually, they're preparing themselves for radical change. The wise are simplifying their lives deliberately. The wise are starting to pay attention to how nature works more deliberately, because the value is in the air, the water, and the earth. Those who have been going to and from the earth, devouring nations, think that they're just going to be claiming people's estates and burying them underneath the Vatican. I don't think they're going to take that house on the corner right there that they foreclosed and move it from Deutsche Bank under the Vatican's vaults. It can only be a hypothecation claim. Is that correct? So therefore, the claim is an abstract, isn't it? Although it's dealing with the physical world. Therefore, the issue of right of claim is primal at this time, isn't it? Isn't it? Almost midnight. Key. So since with the Unum Sanctum policy, they already declared the heirs dead already, and the whole platform of the U.S. democracy platform is hypothecation, the issue is you can get people out of the shelters of their homes that are theirs by estate right. Under spurious claims, you guarantee a certain amount of people will die exposed to the elements. Then when the private commercial paper is pulled, they have no access to resources because the resources have already been hypothecated to the popes of Rome under the secret treaty of Rome with the help of their marching Negro leader guys who will pacify the people to accept these belief systems that actually are Roman orders having nothing to do with Jesus, God, Allah, Moses, Muhammad. None of them. Almost midnight. So the Basel Agreement is really them making a promise of stop doing what they're doing. And they reneged, didn't they?
As always.
So, patience. So they're given another chance, right? And they reneged again. Is that not motu proprio 2013? Is the Heliacal rising of Sirius from behind the sun, July the 4th, 2014? Isn't there a letter that was sent to someone by Pope Francis because of that breach of motu proprio of 2013? They breached again, didn't they?
Yes, they did.
Look for a sledgehammer. Look for a sledgehammer. According to the rules of nature. Now, did not the nations of the earth come together in around 1959, 1960, dealing with decolonization? Did they breach?
Yes, they did.
Did a man who was raised among the Anayamuya, who the people called Cherokee, come in 1913 and command the Queen of England to stop the breaches of their obligations, which were pre-existing under treaty and constitution operations of law? Did they breach? Interesting.
Come on.
Interesting. Almost midnight. All right. Now, so, is it not true that, and I want you to do this research, we just mentioned it earlier, we're not talking only this. Is it not true that Uranus and Saturn, who were singular rulers of the Aquarian cycle constellation for millennia in cycles of 12 disciples of 12, singular rulers, but unique to this time and this cycle, that Uranus and Saturn are co-rulers of the Aquarian cycle right now. So you have a super electrical charge.
Yes.
And you have a super spanker.
That's right.
Having a jalabu and his hood is up. And you got a sickle. We're talking about operations of nature, not mere opinion. Then you have, tell me if I'm wrong, I'm just throwing it out there, do your research. Jupiter and Uranus on the same side of the cycles of their orbital planes with the Earth, which means they're pulling the Earth. Let's not talk about Nibiru. Let's don't even go there. Let's talk about Uranus and Jupiter. And the UV rays that contemporary scientists aren't used to, they even have to give it a new numerical degree, that they're not used to hitting this planet. Does that not mean in law, that when you have accelerated UV rays on a higher level than been hitting this planet, it will kill all mutants? Does that not mean the Earth is going to start cleansing herself? Does it not also mean that if we're not harmonic in nature, it's called extinction? So if you take the philosophical, Kabbalistic philosophical term, honor your mothers and fathers, into law, bringing it into what you call laws of civilization, does that not mean that an inheritance is at stake and that those in honor must show that they're in honor and those who are not going to be debated with? Almost midnight. That's where we are. In fact, and therefore when you read the Ephemerides, it will certainly reflect in the physical world. Therefore, as above, so below. And that's the truth. Almost midnight. Breach, 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 breach. You think what they think they're going to do this under Uranus and Saturn and continue that pattern? And then we can sit around and still be comfortable playing our little belief games and Mother Nature ain't going to kick our keisters? She don't kick your keisters without warning. Never does. Give her the mic. Almost midnight. But particularly, and we'll talk about this later, Dave, just do a little research on that, because I don't want to get off in a tangent into that, into the astrological calculations. Yeah? Go ahead.
It's just energetically, Saturn. We know that Saturn is a planet whose influence causes one to have to reflect and deal with the consequences of what has already occurred.
Yes.
Hence, when we talk about Saturn returns in your lives, most people get at least 2, and some, if they're lucky, they get 3 every 29 or so years. But we know that each time when you look at those 29-year cycles or their Saturn energies, that it is a sort of a rehashing of what has been, looking at it, dealing with the consequences of it, and hopefully moving forward, learning from it, and going forward.
And this will be loosely referred to in philosophical speak as judgment.
Absolutely. And it happens, like you said, everything, all patterns are the same. So even in our individual existence on the planet, with those of you who have not yet reached 29, by the time you get 29, say 30, somewhere between 29 and 30, you'll have a Saturn return, and you'll actually be at a place where you were like, wow, And that was a lesson, and you're looking back, you're evaluating, you're making determinations of what you've done, so that when you move forward, hopefully you move forward in a more positive, or I hate to say positive, but that your direction is one where you have learned from your past 29 years. When you get to 58 to 59 or so, here you go again. I've had 2 of them so far. So, but the same thing happens with the influence in general when Saturn is as strong as it is. That you're gonna have to date, and we're looking at so-called government and a lot of the hidden things.
Everything.
We talked about apocalypse and the fact that, like I said, I asked a pastor a couple weeks ago, do you know what apocalypse meant? Means that he said, yeah, it means the end. I said, no, it means the revealing.
Yes.
And so we've been denied the truth of, we're fearful of something that's going to actually help us, because anything apocalyptic is revealing, and that is the energy that we are actually in, and getting stronger as we progress.
And I think with your contemplation in that area is why you suggested me to call the lecture tonight
Almost midnight. Eating the handwriting on the wall. Yeah,
Yes.
because
And even with the dynamics, when you're looking at Saturn and Uranus, dynamic duo.
Right.
Where it says there shall be no stone
That's what I'm
unturned.
turning.
So if in the equinox of the sun, if the sun, like in religious controversy, is standing at high noon, metaphorically, and that's what it means actually in this cycle with Uranus and Saturn ruling, time speeds up. And it means there'll be little casting of shadow in the spiritual realm. That's a metaphor of the physical demonstrated in the physical world. So we're talking like not 3 dimension, late, the high 4th dimension, and then the 5th dimension. So if you have no shadow, that means by just that, not what people think, what they believe, what they want. It's irrelevant of what they want to believe. All things are revealed.
Revealed.
It has nothing to do with what you believe.
Absolutely.
It has to do with what nature herself is doing. And my view at this.
Might add one other thing, and I know we're talking more about what we ought to be doing, because one of the things that was in our description is that we didn't want people to continue to be dealing with what the paralysis of analysis, because a lot of times people want to take okay, let me figure this out, let me overthink, let me mull over this and cogitate over this, when we don't have that luxury, because so much has come before that has been ignored, that now it's right upon us.
Meaning that nature gives us so many lessons, and she gives us so many truths. We have the free will to observe them or to exercise what is known as a sluggish will, which means it is not without us, it is within us. And we need to be made aware to take responsibility and not feel like total victims. Yes, the priesthood has been taking advantage of us. Granted, true. However, we're not totally innocent. Because if we pay attention to Mother Nature, she tells us all we need to know. And even though we don't have all the phosphates and salts, because Mom keeps us around 9 moons, but in the culture, she tells us about the salts and the phosphates of the missing moons on the cycle, that 12-step ladder. But we gave up the culture, following after Rome. We can't lie, we like to, but we can't lie and keep acting like we're so daggone lost. No, our people follow after Rome, transacting business in Roman names, adopting Constantinian dogma in the name of religion, knowingly, then blaming it on Yahshua, and then calling him Jesus when they know it's not his name, and then playing innocent when we catch in hell.
And then this
we're full of it, and someone needs to call us on it.
And it also tells us, in the Bible, parts of it we know come from things that are valid and true, but it says to come out from among her. And so,
Get out.
and we think, we've been taught that coming out means, come out of the world, not knowing that we have been, in this illusion.
It's jurisdiction.
We need to come out of that, and it tells us that. And we've just been given a misinterpretation of what it.
And another way that harmonizes with what you're saying, when it is said in Septuaginta, render unto Caesar what is Caesar's. And Caesar doesn't mean Julius Caesar. Caesar means Roman rulers collectively. And people must admit that the problems on the planet Earth up to this day came from the Roman Catholic Church bulls that have been enforced upon the planet since the Spanish Inquisition, and particularly since 1492 on the Western world, and then perpetrated as a launching point from North America on the rest of humanity, destroying civilization and blaming it on a mystical devil that ain't did nothing. It's been Rome that's been doing this demonic stuff around this planet. And if the people aren't willing to accept that truth and tell that truth, nature will not protect us when she starts storming.
And they admitted in their writings that when they came upon this land, they found a people who was in touch with their own God and had a peaceable people with their own culture, their own religion, and so forth. And so everything we've been given or has been forced upon us has been in direct opposition to our natural way.
Yes, and we've lost our estate and our birthright. Now, the deal, you turned down. Thank you. She's right on it. All right. So almost midnight, and I think, because when you examine us, even when you examine the politics that are operative, because remember, all of the politics is what you call a system of agreed men under unum sanctum policy, regulating under the Roman Curia the estates of conquered peoples. That's the fact. Not belief. That's the fact. But upon examination, particularly when you're talking to our people about the accelerated problems that we're having today in targeted communities, starting with gentrification, which is really genocide, where they're stealing people's properties under what they call Deutsche Bank foreclosures, Wells Fargo foreclosures, etc. That's the unum sanctum policy of claiming people's estates. And that is one of the major issues or problems that we're having today across the country. All right? So we know now from a prophetic calculation, this is what we know, that all the property will end up back in the hands of government. Key. Now we know that's going to take place. All right? However, it does not remove the fact and obligation for the heirs of the state to make a claim presupposed, active, that when the estates are settled, because they must be settled, because this is what's been happening. Transactions that have been going through what's that, a DCT in New York, on Wall Street. I apologize. This is where all properties, states, stocks, bonds, claims go through, and the transactions are made, whereas the owners, alleged owners of all transferred properties are registered. But with the stock and derivative systems that they set up to accelerate the unum sanctum policy to steal people's estates and to liquidate people's private estates for the United States Service Corporation, for the Jesuit order, under the guise of legitimate government, under the guise of legitimate federal agencies, that the trades are happening in quantum leap. There's no way that any hour of the day that any of these things are ever settled. That's a fact. By default, it must collapse. If they did nothing, it will collapse. If they did anything, it will collapse. issue is collapsing. Almost midnight. So people who are not astute to the real politics have kind of been going along, even though uncomfortable, with things in the assumption of norm. This is abnormal. Because Uranus and Jupiter is in the same order plane as the Earth. So while we're BSing, we're thinking that things are going to be normal, they're not. In nature, in weather, the Earth is expanding, she's pregnant. You can look at it that way. And so we're going to have cracking, you're going to have sinkholes all over the place. Then you're going to have not only what they're doing with HARP and weather weapons, but they weaponized everything. So they're using actual nature patterns and accelerating them for war purposes only. But they're also creating sideline cause and effect cycles that they weren't looking for, that they don't have total control of either. You know, so you got to look at this reality. So meanwhile, the average living units out there that they'll call individuals who got caught up in belief systems aren't prepared with the real world operations and going to be, some of them going to crack up. But to them, that's collateral. They want that to happen. If those who know in their responsibility to each other breaks that egg of naivety, that false comfort zone that we've fallen into. Yes, it's uncomfortable, but if you can just get these people thinking again, and they start harmonizing with nature, you know that she will connect and start fixing their wires anyway. You know, it is that energy of that collective thought that we're actually seeking. That's really the remedy. That's really the remedy. We're not really, truthfully, we will send people into operative affidavits and writs, knowing they will not be satisfied. But if you tell people that from the beginning, they'll be saying, why are you doing that? If they're not spiritually connected, they can't see the value. If they're spiritually connected, they understand that you must make your claim, because in the arena of Uranus and Saturn ruling, you're going to have to answer to whatever decisions you make now, before almost midnight. What it is humanity is being forced, whether they're cognizant of it or not, to take a known open position. And whatever side you're on, we're not talking about perfection and we're not talking about imperfection. We know we both have those qualities, you know, higher self and lower self. But where your dominant thought processes stand, meaning that imagine a polar, a pelu, a line, you know, a scale. What side of the scale are you really leaning on? No one can hide behind their beliefs anymore. They need to be made aware of that. The more and the quicker they shed belief systems, when you toss it in the trash can and stop attributing it to the divine, which it never had a connection to. That's a tool of the priesthood, not of the prophets. See, that's very important. The belief systems were not the tools or the philosophies of the prophets. They were the tools and the philosophies of the priesthood, who used the prophets as fronts for their own personal gain. And that has truthfully been the operations on this planet for quite some time. But you know that many people are unwilling to go there because the priesthood will take your life.
Yep. Right.
The priesthood will attack you economically, socially, and politically.
Yes.
However,
Come on with it.
those who submit to that are also showing who their God is. As man unfolds, his God unfolds. And they're constant showing that they fear Rome more than they fear Allah, Jesus, the prophets, which they keep doing. It's showing who their God really is. In a metaphysical analysis, is that not an assignment of sovereign right and power? So when Rome sits upon the throne claiming to be God, in fact, you kind of call it wrong, but according to the people, they assigned him. Don't they call him the white father? Doesn't white mean sovereign? Sovereign means the ruler of the land. So why are they complaining because he's taking their land? Were they trying to act like they can't read? They claim to be spiritual. It's almost midnight because he's liquidating their estates. Now that's what's really happening in the political world. That's not opinion. That's what's happening in the so-called financial system. So the Basel Agreement was them promising to stop doing that. That's what the Basel Switzerland actually is. With them gold accounts. Isn't it? Oh, all right. I just want to make that clear. And they're preaching, aren't they? Oh, yes. Brother.
Salam. I had a question, and I'd like for you to possibly enlarge upon it because ignorance is no excuse of the law.
And the reason it isn't, now hold up right there, say that again because it's very important.
Ignorance is no excuse of the law.
Ignorance of the law is no excuse. Why is that so? This is why it is so. Alphabet. Count. A. B. C. D. E. F. G. H. I. Also symbolized Is that not true? We're talking about the metaphysics and we're talking about Gnosticism. Right?
Right. And
Now, hold on. Stay with you. Rule on earth, planet, and civilization. Man, know thyself. Right? In relationship to your estate, honor your mothers and your fathers. That what? That your days may be longer upon what? The cloud? Earthland. Oh, so we're talking about aggregate, aren't we? The Lord thy God has given you. We're talking the state, aren't you? Alright? So that's the law, or the rule of enforcing the law divine that's common to all humanity. It's called common law, isn't it? Alright.
that word there is that J-O-B.
And when you know yourself, you know that you have a name that's in the verbal sound, that's verbalized, right? But you also have a name that cannot be expressed. And it is in the numerical angles and glyphs coming from your mother's womb. And this is called a horoscope, isn't it? A scope of the sun put into math according to the what? The measurement of the equinoxes of the sun, right? And so at that point, you say, I am that I am, right? When the senses that are in the physical plane, you got smell, touch, hearing, sight, right? Taste. But you have the abstract of insight and intuition. When you perfect them and solidify them, they're all forms of seeing, aren't they? And the 7 sights become one. They're called the 7 eyes of Allah. Right? All universal law. And so you got the symbol of the eye. And when you have come to that sensitivity, harmonic with nature, you have insight, and they call that the capacity of what? Starts with an M. And they also have other names. Go ahead. Go ahead, say. And we're not talking about the being nomad and monad. Monad is the sparkle energy, like a nuclear energy that cannot be put out. However, religion was designed to put air upon it to make it bigger. That's what religion is for, no other purpose. But you're a nomad after your mother takes you from the womb to give you a vehicle to travel in, which is the manifest, or what you call the man, or the temple. Soul of man's temple, Solomon's temple. So Solomon's temple is the incomplete pyramid symbol. But the eye is slightly disconnected. When you become conscious, then you've mastered it. And this is when you get this symbol. You got the earth glyph, right? And you got the 4 gates, right? And that's called the Master Seal. And so that is the metaphysical meaning of Islam. It's a science, not a belief system. Are we clear? Now, for some who don't know, who are never told this by the priesthood, to them it's a belief system. Where they go salam, they blow anything. Right? And really, that's really not what it is. Are we clear? Are we clear?
Yes.
So when you learn the truth about how things work, I wouldn't care if they say they're Jew or Christian or the founding fathers. They all got Korans, but they don't look at it like the common people look at it. They look at it as a mathematical tool and know that's exactly what it is.
It's not
Now,
I just want to ask another question. It's not worship the highest form of self-expression, which would be know thyself?
this is what, yes, but the deal of it, hold on, no, I want you to reflect that, because I want you to go back to what you started with, because I just took a part of it and expressed what it actually is. Now, when it comes to claim of a state, the right or the enforcement, because you went to law school, right? And therefore you also learn sociology. You must. Goes with it. And history. Therefore, you must be in honor at all times. And it is the honor that is demonstratable by you in society that gives you standing to do what? To trump the canon law. And the canon law is what the popes of Rome used in the World Global Trust to claim people's estate. And he created what is called the transmitting utility, or the man of straw, by which that claim is made. And is it not true that the common law trumps the canon law? So therefore, to trump the canon law, you must be in honor, or in law, in propria persona, in one's own proper person. Therefore, one must know oneself to be proper. Is that not true? And when you're talking in her inheritances, you must honor your mother, because that's where your inheritances come from. That's the law on this planet. Now, you go to some other universe and start some stuff, but according to the rules that's always been on this planet, that's the truth. And irremovable, isn't it? Therefore, if one does not acknowledge one's nativity, sometimes called nationality, don't talk about your estate and property, because it ain't happening. Is that not why the dark priesthood created the branding system? It is. Is that not why the European colonists that came to the Western Hemisphere put their founding names on people of Moorish descent, that they branded Negro, Black, and Colored, and Indians, so they could claim their estates under the corporate states, and that's what they've been doing? In fact, so therefore, those people who are not called by their mother's and father's name have no right of estate. Is that not demonstrated in the Dungy case of 1855? Argument over. Therefore, any scholars that pretend they don't know that rule, or that history, or that jurisprudence is full of maggot doo-doo wrapped in purple paper. They're not dumb. They're sellouts, and they need to be called on it. And for those who pretend they don't understand what Noble Ali did, is also lying.
That's right. That's right.
Because they ain't got a daggone thing to do with beliefs whatsoever. Has everything to do with a lost estate that the heirs didn't know they had. Almost midnight. Because Rome is liquidating their estates. That is expressed in the political realm today, factually. Grab the mic. Almost midnight. Which means those who know haven't been doing a good enough job to make people who are not aware of this, or who kind of stagnant with this information, to stop trying to sell them some belief systems and tell them the truth about the politics. And stop trying to act like this has nothing to do with their spirituality.
Right.
It has everything to do with it.
Was that the DTC spoke earlier? Was that the
Yes.
Depository Trust Corporation?
Yes, yes.
My question is,
DTC, which is what I was trying to say. Oh, apologize. Write this down. And that's located on Water Street in New York. And this is where all instrumentalities, all mortgages, any transactions in stocks, etc., must go through there. So when you so-called get a mortgage, which is really a sharecropping agreement, you don't own crap. It's a sharecropping agreement. So they already foreclosed on these people within 72 hours, and most of them don't have a trust. It never dawns on them to set up a trust. No one teaches them that rule, and they teach them that a mortgage is a buying and a selling of property, when actually it's bookkeeping processes on your estate of your labor and all inheritances under the guise of selling you a piece of property, and you become the stock and the pledge for all of the debts that are implied.
That's defined in the colonial articles.
Yes.
Under the, I forget what the article is, 1643, and they were figuring out, coming together, organized to defend against the natives here because we were being very violent against them. So this process here is one of their measures.
All right, and that's why everything goes through the DTC.
But is the adverse claim get recorded at DTC?
Isn't the adverse claim an automatic whenever there's a challenge against any trust or estate or foreclosure?
Out the gate, first thing.
That-
Status.
Fact. Trust law, estate law, contract law. Whenever there's an action against any estate, which a foreclosure is one of the major ex parte activities that take place in the Western Hemisphere, an adverse claim, right of defense is an automatic. You can close the lid if you want to. See the lid? Yeah. But do you understand? That's an automatic. We're talking about this today, too. That's an automatic. Part of our conversation. So when people are talking about dealing with these issues at all, and adverse claim does not come up in your conversation, you're already in a state of abandonment.
Okay, so your signature, resigning your signature from on that.
Rescission of signature. What is a rescission of signature? It's a reclamation of the promissory note in the adverse claim.
So that corrects the situation at the DTC.
Thank you so much.
Okay, I just want to make sure I understand.
Let's back up. Because we want everybody else to understand where you're going with this. Because if they don't understand what you said with the adverse claim, and we move on, we do them no good. We need them to understand what happens.
That's right.
Meaning like this. What we call push on this planet. Others call gravity. Right? So we know, in fact, it's really, gravity is not exactly true on this planet. Right? Now we know that, but we know the masses are filled with gravity. Right? So, in the process of fall, gravity, so-called, is a default. Is it not true?
Yes.
The pull, the push. In the process of estate law, whenever a foreclosure arises, automatically the defense is called adverse claim. How come foreclosures are talked about and adverse claim is not? That means somebody's holding back information. I mean, it goes with it. It's sort of like Hershey chocolate comes with a wrapper, usually. You know when they say a bottle of soda, you ain't planning on keeping the bottle. Unless it's one of them pretty bottles, but basically, you're not planning on keeping the bottle. You're going to drink the soda and toss the bottle for recycling. Right? But the bottle comes by default. You know, a glass of water, you might have a cup, it's still called a glass of water. But it comes by default, right? Swimming pool, you got water, but you usually got this container. Comes by default, correct? Huh? Got a house, different shapes, but we got these called rooms. These walls come by default. They call the room. So if there's a foreclosure, an adverse claim comes with it by default. Why is that not discussed? Because somebody doesn't want the people under attack to be aware what their argument is. Therefore, if you're going to look for resolution and solution, if you're the accused, you must bring up what is called adverse claim. So, in the rule of law, almost midnight, because they're liquidating these people's estates, you got to start making that argument. And you can't be getting in the ring and then start talking about, Trina, let me see. Am I supposed to jab like this? Meanwhile, I'm discussing, this guy going, punch me, he walking all around me, punch me all on top of the head, and I'm discussing with you. You're going, how do I jab? I'm supposed to jab like this, and I'm supposed to jab like this. And is that a hook? You don't wait till you get in the ring to start talking about how you punch. You do your training before you get there, because once you get on the outside of that rope, they ain't playing. Oh, he trying to hit me. I think so. You don't get this. So in the real world, of the things that our people deal with every day, they don't learn the rules. And the people who should be teaching us are teaching us belief systems instead of the facts of how things really operate. Then we keep getting our keisters cooked and wonder what's happening to us. Why? They're dealing with beliefs and not the facts. I, self, law, am master. Learn the rules of the game before you get in the ring. Because once you get in the ring, you ain't sparring no more. You know, like, oh, don't hit me too hard in the gym. You know, I got this. Right. You get in the ring, they ain't going to, tapping you. Boom! Hey, man, you serious? And this is what's happening to us in the real world. Adverse claim. That's the right of defense for the accused in estate law, in foreclosure, automatic. So rescission of signature, you're commanding the presentment of the proper argument of the mortgage agreement with the wedding signature, no robo signature, no electronic signature, wedding signature with the promissory note upon which the loan agreement is built. For your signature on it in relationship to the global or state trust that the postal loan set up for conquered people and lands, and they're administering it under the Roman Curia. That's a promissory note of drawing on that sister QB trust that they set up. You didn't set up, they set up. And it's already satisfied against your estate. So there is no damn debt, and never was. Adverse claim, you could demand them to produce that for the record, because that's how they got to move the court. Isn't that how the writ of execution is made? Is it not true in law that the holder in due course or claimant of an estate must have proof of title, not certificate of title, proof of title to that land? Huh? Are Europeans who came here to North America Americans?
Nope.
Why do you keep calling them Americans? Except you're giving up your estate. Which is why they keep claiming to be Americans, and the stupid Americans aren't rebutting them. Then they give you their name, so everything you buy or sell with the mark of the number name of the number of their name automatically goes to the state under wardship, doesn't it? So does that make them automatically fofers or trustees over your estate? Is that not what's been happening in North America? Because it certainly is. So how easy it is to correct that? You nationalize. It immediately starts filling their bonds. Immediately. Do you go capture them bonds, or are they going to give them up? No, because don't they have Allonge? Just write this down, y'all. Allonge. A-L-L-O-N-G-E. Is this not true why they don't produce the promissory note and the mortgages under the rule of discovery? Because you would see that these things been on the stock market from the time that you so-called made the so-called loan, and you'll see names from different people around this daggone world who got stake in your life, and it's tied to a routing number called the CUSIC number on the Social Security card, which is linked to 12 different bank systems, including Deutsche Bank and Wells Fargo, under the operations of the Jesuit order, regulated on Fleet Street of England under the Secretary of Verona, human trafficking, and they call it foreclosure. And under adverse claim, you didn't ask them to produce that promissory note. as evidence of holder in due course, because they ain't gonna do it. So therefore they have no right to move to court, except that the magistrate ain't really a magistrate. He's an operative from the Bar Association, whose missionary work is to overthrow the republic and your right of a allodial claim to your property.
Not a judge.
Not a judge at all. He's an auctioneer
Come on.
under unum sanctum policy, under the Organic Act of Congress, February 2nd, 1871.
Oh, yeah.
So let us stay focused on that when we want to talk about foreclosures, and let's not make this thing complex. Say it again.
The word you have next to Horus, Jove.
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 In Rome, they would call this eye of Horus the eye of Jove. In your secret societies, Knights Templars, Knights of Columbus, Kairos, Ku Klux Klan, Daughters of Isis, Eastern Star, Masonic orders, they were called, that's how they hide, they just change names to hide stuff from the masses. It's called the Eye of Jove. Are we clear? That's just to make you aware, and I apologize for not explaining that. That's what that is.
It's Grand Sheik. Speaking of airship, and also in conjunction with, you said reversion.
Reversioner.
Okay,
Now,
I have a question.
that would be called, if you make the adverse claim, that would be called the position of reversioner, not a defendant.
Okay. Well, my question is in reference to, as I was preparing for the workshop, etymology workshop, I was going through the Black's Law Dictionary, and the first spell that I came across was the one that it said, to have and to hold to him and his heirs forever.
Yes.
So how is that spell reversed?
See,
the one they put on the marriage license.
Now, here you go.
Right.
Now,
This pertaining to the marriage license, the spell they put on the marriage license.
same thing.
Okay, how
So the
do
marriage
you reverse that
license is
spell?
also a bank bond of Rome claiming the eggs in the fallopian tubes.
Right.
It has nothing to do with some divine missionary work between you and the Most High of heaven. And, and I was checking out your keisters, and we gonna get married and stuff, and you doing all that stuff, and you like my Adidas sneaks and stuff, and so we gonna get married. That's BS. Those are bank bonds. Marriage certificate is a certificate of sale. Have nothing to do with divinity whatsoever, but is an agreement of ships passing in the night, transferring all estates to the Popes of Rome under the secret treaty of Ramona, and the preacher is an auctioneer, and he's an agent of the state. This is why he says, "Oh, you just checking out this sister and everything. Hold on, stuff like this. So I'm going to get the rice ready. Put your shades on so they do a smack you with this rice. Watch it." And they say, brother, was you checking out that sister? And was she checking you out? When you check with your mother and father and all that stuff, and you did the reading and stuff and see that you qualified? Well, now that we ain't going through all this BS door, and we got this certificate of sale, by the power vested in me by the state of Maryland, state agent, I pronounce you man and wife. Then they tell these same people, separation of church and state. They lie to their faces, but they protect themselves from common law. They'll say, by the power vested in me by the state of Pennsylvania, state of New York, state of California, I pronounce you man and wife. Oh, we got this. Y'all been played. All of your estates now belong to the state. That is a contract, and they're going to enforce it. What occurs every time, now y'all, look what happens. Look what happens. Whenever there's a death in the family, right? Now, let me show you what happens to our people, and they don't pay attention to these things. What is one of the first things that happens that really destroys the family's economics and most of the average person, it never dawns on them what's happening?
Give up the death certificate.
The estate goes into probate. The estate goes into probate.
Teach right there.
And what is probate? This is Rome making first claim on all inheritances. And what do they do to people called Negro, Black, and Colored? Wards of the state. They tax them out of the estate and steal the estate.
There it is.
And it happens every time. And they ain't figured it out yet. What the hell do Europeans have a right to claim any estate of Aboriginal people anywhere on this planet? That every time a family member dies, the state comes in and starts claiming your property. That's supposed to go to your children. And then tax you out and take the land. And the tax is usually more than you could ever make in your lifetime.
Yeah.
So they know you can't pay it, then they confiscate the estate, which was the plan in the first place.
Wait, have no bill of sale from the original inheritors. I mean, why are they here? You can pick them all with that.
Hold on. Do they promote bills of sales or do they promote certificates of title? Because the bill of sale is constitutional. They ain't talking about no bill of sale because they have no jurisdiction in that. This is again when you do private communications or transfers of stuff, you can do bill of sales. Example. When I was putting addition on my brother's house years ago in New York, we used to go on old Route 99 up there in New Paltz area. This is before they did the new Route 99. And we used to ride, it was real winding, rural area, winding roads and stuff like that. There's mountains up there. And we used to pass this place, and it was this beautiful gold Audi that was sitting always clean. Glass shining like diamonds. It was always clean, but would never move. So out of curiosity, we stopped one day and asked the man that was at a vegetable stand there about the car. He said, "Oh, people over there on their car been sitting there for a while. They bought her daughter a Mercedes, and she just let it sit. I think it overheats, something like that. But the car is beautiful, right?" So I asked about the car, and they were telling me about an addition that was put on their house. And then when my brother introduced himself, they said, "Oh, that's your house on Orchard?" Because I did a 5-tier deck around his pool, and I put a 48-foot addition on his house. And his house on the corner. And it's really a nice piece of property. He says, "You did that work?" Please, that's what I do. So the guy said, "Well, the contractor didn't finish their job with some electric and some small stuff they did." So I made a contract with them, and I did work. They gave me that Audi for $2,200. Right? Now, hold this. They got private phones for both passengers in the back. Right? Yeah. Individual speaker systems for passengers in the back. Right? Beautiful car. Just needed a water pump. That's all I need. But that's like upper middle class. That ain't nothing for them. Let it get rid of it. Dummy. Well, thank you. I used to do body work too. It ain't no big deal. But anyway, now, what I did on New Route 99, the first thing I did is I went around there and I went to the state police and I gave them my ID and told them I just bought this car so you know this car. Because that's how they do. When in the area, they check everything. And so I put more stacks on there. I printed it out instead of, I didn't have the metal. And I put it in plastic. And I said, so when you see me, you'll know. Plus, I had bought a Jeep truck, the Jeep pickups. All right. And I drove that up to New York. I bought it in Camden. So I drove up the turnpike with no tags or nothing on it. I drove it all up there to do the work. So I needed a truck, so I just bought a truck. So I bought the truck from the dealer, and I didn't pay tax either. And I told them that too. So I used to go across the route of Poughkeepsie, to Poughkeepsie from Highland to get supplies. And I drove that truck up there the whole time I was building the house, no tags. But I notified them. You understand the same thing? And now that Audi, I did the same thing. And I brought that Audi back to Camden with more tags on it. Now I was coming down old 289, 289 is like a truck route. And the big German cars, the faster you go, they don't seem like they're going as fast. So I'm passing troopers and everyone. Right? I'm doing about 85, I thought I was doing 55. Right. So they followed us into McDonald's, me and my niece, because my niece was up there. So I was bringing her home. So I was bringing the car too, because we had too many cars in the driveway. And so he sat behind the car until we came out at the rest stop. We were stopped at the rest stop. And he came out, he followed me for a while, right? And then he just pulled off. But anyway, later on, this is about a year later, because I was also doing kitchens in, where was that at? In another part of New York, I forget it. It'll come to my mind anyway. I was doing government kitchens at Bowman's Towers. And my niece had taken the car and was operating the car around in Camden with the tag on. She had a license and nothing like that. So on 30th Street, she hit a pothole or whatever and crashed it into 3 cars. Right? Crashed the Audi into 3 cars. And so when I got home, my mama, Tanira, she said, now she's little then. I came home. Now I had a Lincoln. I had a Lincoln in the front of the car, in front of the house, but I also had a Jeep Cherokee in the back. And my sister also had a Lincoln, right? So, and I had the Audi, and we kept that in the front instead of the yard because we just had too many cars running. So Tay had crashed the car. So Mama said, Uncle Taj, she came to the door and I came home. Uncle Taj, Tayshona busted up your car. Right? So, I wasn't worried about it. Look, I was worried about whether they was hurt or not, because I had a bunch of cars. That would mean nothing to me. I just wanted to know it was all right. Now, this is what happened. So I went up and was talking to Tay, and Tay was like, so embarrassed and ashamed, but still I was going to be mad because she tore the car up. Right? And I wasn't glad that it was all right. What occurred was the policyholders, enforcers, took her and because she had the children in the car, and checked them out of Cooper, made sure they was all right, brought her back home, she didn't get no tickets, no nothing. What I had in the car was a bill of sale that I made for both the girl in New York, near in Highland, and myself, duplicate. And I had on there private pure contract, compensation, trade, representing my labor, demonstrated by 2,200 Federal Reserve notes for record keeping, distinguished from Article 1, Section 10, lawful United States money.
I bet you can't see that again.
No, I'm just saying, that's what I built contracts. And it was in the car. The deal is bill of sale.
You did this in one of your videos. I didn't write it down then. I'm trying to get it all now.
We're talking principle. This is the principle.
Right.
The issue is bill of sale. I'm just telling you a factual story
Yes.
of a car with mortgage tags on it, with the bill of sale in it. Means they had no jurisdiction. They only had obligation to protect it. That's why she didn't get no tickets. Because she's a living, and she's a national. She didn't need no damn license.
It was how you worded it.
And they're drawing off of our state by the day.
They want the sentence again.
It is on the video. Right?
They want the sentence again.
The sentence.
No, that's
Yes,
on the
could you
video.
repeat the language?
It's on the top drive.
Bill of sale. This is 2,200 Federal Reserve notes in lieu of lawful United States money as per Article 1, Section 10 of the Constitution for the United States, that to put it out all in words. All right, basically that, right? Transfer or trade of my labor, represented by these bookkeeping instruments, because that's all they are. They're bookkeeping entries. They're not money. And just even that, as long as you say bill of sale, they do not do a bill of sale under feudal law.
That's right.
And you know that the U.S. democracy is a feudal law platform to steal your estate. But if you just know these fundamental rules, start doing business with each other on these principles.
Yeah.
You start locking Rome out. Meaning that what gives their instrumentality power is that we don't claim our estate because we don't know estate law. We don't enforce the Constitution, which is a covenant agreement that they're obligated to, not optional. This is why when you begin to get conscious, they'll present UCCs, site draft, affidavits to the Transportation Department, now authentication of the birth certificate, all of these implications of attaching yourself to the access to the CUSIC number, to the 62V trust that they set up since Boniface and the conquest of the Moors to control conquered peoples and lands. That 62V trust is connected to that World Global Trust that both folks set up. So whether they're talking about UCCs, authenticating birth certificate, HMOs, site drafts, or certificates to the Transportation Department, all of these different instrumentalities are con artist games of promising people access to that 62 trust that the straw man is built upon.
Excuse me,
I don't care what name they give it.
Taj, I listened to a lot of your videos, and one of them you mentioned about this situation here, correspondences between England and the Moroccan Empire, and correspondences between Great Britain and the Moroccan Empire. I've been looking for them. I've had a hard time finding them because it would help.
No, you don't. All you need to do, you have access to the Historical Society in Germantown, because you're local. Even though you're talking Chester yourself. Basically, start doing correspondences, starting with that letter from George Washington to the Sultan of Morocco that I published in the paper in 201, and start following that trail of treaty correspondences. Look for United States treaty correspondences and start looking up war records. You'll find them. Also, you'll find some of them surprisingly under so-called Indian treaties, too. Yes, you will. Because they try to hide it.
Because I have a copy of a diplomatic correspondence telling John Adams and them that they have to be a country.
Oh, of course.
So already it's telling them just a bunch of colonies.
Now, and this is why, as an example, when Barack H. Obama went to Kirkuk, or what the masses call Egypt, and exposed that the American Constitution comes from Muslim law, he was giving you a heads up. Michelle went to the Alhambra, the Red House, triangulated. Rahm Emanuel, the Jew, left his administration 2010, ran for mayor of Chicago, issued a proclamation December the 22nd, first full day of the winter solstice, according to Circle 7 North Gate, from his desk, telling about no withdrawing and telling that we are the Aboriginal people of the land.
Okay, also,
hold on. Then they came back and they signed the rights of indigenous people for our people to declare their nationality, Article 5. Meaning that all the signals are there. Whether the people recognize what they're looking at is a different issue. Whether or not people who should be making people cognizant of what just these signals, these strong signals, I mean, they weren't even metaphorical. They were direct. And yet, so many people went over their heads.
also, I think you might want to include, I'm sorry, just one more thing, I've been doing a lot of studying. I'm going to order it soon, but it's called the Records of the Federal Convention of 1787. It's late spring through the summer. 3 volumes. Volume 2 makes it real clear that each of these state jurisdictions are actually corporations. These are the big parts during the convention, and that the United States was being considered to be not a body politic, but a body corporate politic. So it's actually a corporation. So by the time George Washington came,
Not actually, it is. See, let's remove the adjectives.
by the time George Washington showed up on the scene, that by appointment, that they were actually it is a corporation.
Yes.
As it was debated.
And no, this is what I'm saying to you. I want you to continue. And it's not unlike the conversation we were having the other day. What we want to do to start clearing up people's concepts is stop interjecting adjectives, meaning that let's not talk about the woman being so-called pregnant. She's either pregnant or she's not.
Come on with that.
Let's not start calling her half pregnant because she's 4.5 months. No, she's pregnant. Whether she's 1 month, 4.5 months, 9 months. She's not almost and so-called and allegedly pregnant. You know, it's not actually, I think it is, supposedly, no, the United States is a corporation, not a country. Let's get that out the way from day one. Unless we get that clear in the minds of the people, their training is that private corporation that was registered in France 1754, that Lincoln bankrupted, is the country for the purpose of stealing these people's estate. And that's the foundation of these politics. So let's get this out of the way. The United States is a private corporation that went bankrupt about 4 or 5 times and has been, since 1871, falsely presented to the people, and particularly the heirs of the estate, as the country. And it is not, and as long as they look at the politics with any of that mentality in their mind, they've already lost every legal argument of the state. So we must clear up that foundation. Absolutely.
Well, I'm just saying.
No, I'm not saying that just for you. I'm saying that for the public who are listening to us.
No, I'm saying it's concerning the debates of the convention, the Federal Convention of 1787, because it goes back that far.
Yes.
So it actually go back further than 1871.
In conjunction with what you're saying.
Yes.
Aren't we also talking about the Northwest Ordinance, or the Ordinance of 1787, where the determination was clearly made that all of the states can only have a Republican form of government, which is registered in the Constitution, Article 4, Section 4.
I didn't read all those in the debate.
No, I'm making this point for the people listening, because it's important for them to know that in order for them to mentally tie back to the land and write a claim of the state. And when a politician or some historian starts talking about the U.S. democracy, for them to put that in check immediately.
That's right.
Failure to do so is a waiver of your right. Because that's a false platform, a false foundation, and an imposter governmental platform, and is not the legitimate government at any time, point, or place in history. But actually is a cabal operatives of criminal imposters, for the purpose of converting the people's estates into their private corporate United States corporation that has been gone bankrupt multiplicity of times, which is why the Pope did the road to Proprio in 2013. I'm disqualifying that not because I'm assuming you don't know that, because I know you know that. I'm talking for the people who are listening so that our conversation doesn't go past them without quality. I want them to have the quality of what we're thinking in the back of our heads while discussing it.
My problem is, I live in the county in the 9th president.
Say again?
I live in the county in the 9th president, the appointed one. I live in that county. That's what I think. My problem is waking people up. I have this information. I present
It is very simple. You know, like if I come to you and I want to work the cash register, but I don't know. And once you show me how to work that cash register, then if I do have a comprehension on how the cash register works, I should be able to tell someone else, unless I don't know yet. So perfect what you know and just simply transfer it to another. And keep it simple. That's what I always say, keep it simple. Let us stop making simple stuff complex. Like it's, metaphorically, you got really analyze. You know what? Analyze nothing. When the Europeans conquered the Alhambra Red House, they set up a global estate trust to regulate and to administer over conquered peoples and lands.
All right.
The membership of the first order of rulers, that means made men, whether you deal with Knights Templars, Illuminati, Caicos, Ku Klux Klan, Union Guard, Thule Society, Doors of American Revolution, ETC, in their chambers, they all have what? Moorish fezzes, and they have lodges that they name after Moorish women and Moorish towns, right?
All right.
And they are called members of the Roman Curia. So all corporate entities under Western Hemisphere or under Occidental rule are members of the Roman Curia. So if you know these rules, you already know whether it's the chairman or the president of Deutsche Bank or the chairman of Sears or the CEO of any Wall Street entity or any corporate entity under the United States corporation operations, that they're members of the Roman Curia. So why would you expect them to do anything but help steal your estate when that's the basis of all their bond systems and derivatives? And since that's the basis of all their bond systems and derivatives, are they going to let you capture that birth certificate, which is a bank bond with 90 some odd signatures on it, which are called allonges? And without the original any instrument, you cannot be holder in due course. And to make a claim on any estate, you must be holder in due course. And back to that issue with the brother. For the so-called bank owners or operatives that claim to be holders in due course, if they come to you as a magistrate because they want to foreclose on a property that you have, I have to produce physically the wet ink signature called the mortgage, and the promissory note that goes with it, and they must be clipped together, never separated at any time from the initiation of the alleged loan until its termination. They must never be separated. And they separate them, in fact, within 72 hours, and they sell the promissory note to what is called a pooling company. Is that not true, John?
That's right.
And then they use those, and they're called derivatives. They call them bundling, don't they?
That's right.
So they bundle the promissory notes, and they market it to an established pooling company and get so-called fundings against the mortgages. Now, in law, the promissory note matures in 9 months. Right?
That's right.
So they bundle it and sell it, and then they take that finance plus profits, satisfy the so-called transition between so-called parties. So by default, they become trustees over that instrument. Is that correct?
That's right.
Is that the agreement when you got a so-called mortgage that you sign these people as trustees over your estate?
No, sir.
Is that what that instrument said, that you, well, they're acting as trustees? This is why they always hold the position of the right to sell the deed of trust. Isn't that what when they start sending them 92 instruments to people, they call Form 92s. If you don't make a payment, you get ready to go into foreclosure, because they're acting as a trustee on your estate. Now, law. And this is back to the signature, because you're dealing with an estate and trust law. So if the promissory note, which was not returned to you within the 9 months period, and then they sold it and got finance for it against your estate already satisfied, it was paid for from the beginning. There is no debt against it because it's against your estate. on the wealth that the Pope already claimed from your inheritances. It came from the Moorish station. That's a fact. That's why they got to get you into the black brands, so that you have no claim of the estate. You see? But understand, in the rule of adverse claim, the accuser, or the one who claims to be the holder in due course, have to have produced, for the record, tear this in half. Tear that in half. For the record, to move the court, and stand up. In one hand, he has the mortgage agreement, which means dead pledge. Right? Contract is dead because it's a linear contract, which is unlawful. They get you to sign it, and they didn't sign it, which makes it linear, so it makes the contract dead. However, you're still an active party, so now you're the pledge. That's called dead pledge. Right? That's called dead pledge. Right? So the contract is dead, so what's left? Him. So he's the pledge. So what is... So this is how it works.
And the payment is fraud because it doesn't exist.
It's a dedonis. Don't they put in the mortgage agreement dedonis, which means gift? See, so they're protecting themselves because it cannot be paid with a debt instrument of private commercial paper. It can never be satisfied. Therefore, the one who gave them these instruments default sets themselves up as trustees. So usually, after they make an agreement in order to try to hide the fraud, within 3 months you'll get something in the mail and say that they sold it to another mortgage company. Now you got a new holder. But then you still so-called thinking you're paying them. What's taking place is they're acting as trustees and they're discharging against the Sister QV trust through the routing number that's called the QSIC number that's on the Social Security card that Franklin Delano Roosevelt set up in 1933 for the Jesuit order and the 12 banks. They're routing numbers to the banks. All right? Now, what occurs is every alleged, we're not talking about payment, we're saying alleged payment is a discharge against the alleged debt, which is also called a set-off. Is it satisfied? No, it is never satisfied. It's postponed. Now, the one who thinks that they're buying the property is unbeknownst to themselves sharecropping. So they'll measure your work life and already plan on when they're going to get you out the property, when you're no longer generating for them. That's what a dead pledge is. How do you save yourself? Where's my promissory note that should have been returned to me within 9 months? Because you never gave me that 250 grand in my hand. You gave me a key. And a certificate of title. Not a title. Whether a car or and a certificate of means that the title's somewhere else. But you ain't got it. Now, acting as your FOFA or trustee, they decide whether or not they're going to foreclose. And they can do it at any time. They call it calling the debt. Is that not true? Don't they preserve the right, as they say, to call the debt? At any time? What they're saying is that any time they want to act on this already set up foreclosure, they can, because they're the trustee over your estate. Is that the agreement you made?
No.
Was that exposed to you?
No.
So doesn't that in law call it fraud from day one? Oh, ab initio. So, adverse claim, as Dr. Raven said, is your right to tell them to produce for the record, under rule of discovery, Not when we're going to the Chancellor Court. The Chancellor Court, it's always Chancellor Court when they deal with this. Executor's Court. That's what the Chancellor Court is. Executor's.
Help.
Where is the promissory note and the mortgage instrument with my wedding signature? And are you party to those instruments? What did you just do? You eliminate them as claimants. This is why people who understand that rule title, like a few years back when they started, when the world stopped buying their bonds and they started having difficulties and they started sacrificing the middle class Europeans, like in Manhattan and stuff, and the lawyers commanded for them to produce that promissory note. They want it back. And they challenged it, and the federal government was forced to admit that all MERS foreclosures were frauds. It is that principle, what you just said, that was claiming. So why are they telling our people that? Because we're the main target of the Unum Sanctum policy. That's why. Because we're the real estate owners, not them. That's why they pack the jails with our people. They're not racist, they're not prejudiced. Is that they're the heirs to the land. The real wealth. And the only ones that don't know it. And people who know, who've been living off of their virtues, are not talking. It's called the Masonic secret. Point is that the scholars, the leaders, the politicians, and all the Masonic order, Skull and Bones Illuminati, KKK, all of them know it. And the only ones that don't know it, there's the people that insist on thinking human beings are crayons, who don't know they're the heirs to the world's largest estate, almost midnight. And it's because they're liquidating the estates. Thank you for the demonstration.
You got a question in the back, Todd?
Give him a mic. Go ahead, brother.
For me, it's like, the facts you present are simple. But people are so deeply indoctrinated. Go back to what the original brother was asking.
So, as a direct answer, and keep your train of thought and continue to make your statements. This is back to what the brother said. We're agreeing, however, in law, ignorance of the facts, i.e., ignorance of the law, is no excuse. When you start making excuses, you're automatically in contempt. Are we clear? Why? Because the law is predicated on the honor of your mothers and fathers. And if you don't know your pedigree and your bloodline, and you don't honor your mothers and your fathers, why are you talking about a state? You have none. Because it's based on the honor of your mothers and your fathers all over the planet. That's how you trump the Roman law. Go look up in law book common law and read between the lines. So, first of all, now let's look at this, and I'm going to add this to not dismissing, but giving you something to think about. If these people, and they do, follow where I'm coming from with this, always talking about God, Jesus, Allah, Moses, Muhammad, all the prophets, the Bible, ancient Kemet, ancient Africa, ancient Yucatan, their spirituality. When God's going to kick the devil's butt on Thursday, sell your bike because the rapture is next Friday. They know all this. They should know their bloodline.
All right.
Therefore, ignorance of the law is no excuse. How dare you claim a love for God you do not see and love not your brothers and sisters whom you see by the day. Therefore, how dare you claim to know the laws of the heavens and the earth and don't even know the laws of the land upon which the estate and the land given to you by your forefathers is based. Therefore, you're not excused.
I agree with you completely. And, I can recall a 50-some-year-old man, unconscious more, all the politics going on now. Yeah. And I'm explaining that the Constitution is real and it provides solution, but And I literally told him also, ignorance of the law is no excuse. It's the responsibility of the member of any body politic
to enforce that Constitution.
Actually learn and implement the law.
Yes.
And his response was, that's too much work. That's how deep the indoctrination is. People are
Now,
told that you need a
this is
lawyer.
what in law, when one makes a statement like that, they're declared incompetent, and the operators of the corporate state takes probate over their estate.
But that is how deeply indoctrinated people
Now,
are.
listen to what I'm saying to you. I'm saying this because we're in the house of reawakening minds. We have a purpose for being here. We have a purpose for dispensing this information. We're appealing to the people to be in honor and to stop the habit which they're trained to do. And that is this continuation of making excuses where no excuses are made or accepted. Meaning, recognize this. Get over yourself. Get over yourself. You start making excuses, you're already in the realm of contempt. So at that point, are you being abused or are you abandoning your estate and someone's taking advantage of you? So if you get in the ring, everybody else is going like this. And you doing like this, taking selfies. Who's going to get punched? First them selfies take us, they're pretty good. The last ones, and that's what happens in the real world. In the real world, we've got to stop, how do you say, in our everyday lives, claim to be so advanced and spiritual. And then the results in our communities, our youth are dying younger and younger. Our families are falling apart. Women struggling to take care of children because their men are in jail and the rest of them in the church and half them as fags. And we try to act like the devil did. Instead of taking responsibility that we've screwed up. And we need to fix this thing and stop making damn excuses. Because there is no excuse for us living dead culture. Reaping the results and blaming a mystical devil when it's unum sanctum in the Christian black codes that has been tearing our families apart. And we've been funding our own slavery. And stop blaming it on Jesus that had nothing to do with that. That's wrong. We need to stop lying, and we need to stop allowing people to lie to us, pretending we don't know what the hell is wrong, when the evidence is all over the daggone place. And you're still taking responsibility. Well, see, I didn't know that the stuff, the brown stuff on the lawn wasn't peanut butter. They canned it. You know, we keep making excuses. But then we're going to tell you about the mysticism of God. We're full of doo-doo. We are, but people don't have the guts to tell us that we're hypocrites, that we're sacrificing our children and our own lives. And we need to stop the BS. You know, it's like me sitting up here discussing with you when you see the shapeshifters and the reptilians on the dark side of the moon with the mystical maps of NASA, and then you say, well, man, it's almost, I gotta get to Philly. I don't know nothing about Philly. Well, it's only 20 miles away. Can you Google it? I don't know. Wait a minute, you just tell me the dark side of the moon, shapeshifters and reptilians and grays y'all know all this stuff. Well, see, in Venus, what it really is with the Nibiru coming through on a 90-degree angle every 6,000. Man, whoa, you got all that going on. How much is doing too? I don't know. I think you can interpret it spiritually through there. Come on, it's a matter of interpretation. We keep letting people get away with their fake spirituality and corrupting ourselves and our children when we need to stop all of this BS, dump all of that crap, start with a clean slate and a new mind, and start paying attention to Mother Nature and observing her. We need to take a big, deep laxative. Serious colonic.
Let it all out.
On the planet. with all these institutions, I don't care what they claim to be, and be willing to be reborn with a new mind, because we're contaminated, extremely contaminated. But anyway, continue. I don't need to run over that.
Well, it's just, I lost my train of thought, but, well, I went back to almost midnight because I'm thinking that these people who refuse, like, I have presented people with court solid evidence.
Of course.
And they can't take it in.
It's not, yes, they can. Stop. Stop. Let's go back to no excuse. Like the brother said here, ignorance of the law is no excuse. No. There's a difference between someone with a sluggish will and someone who can't take it in.
All right.
This is the deal. Say this. Say a mother is building a temple, right? Solomon's temple. And we'll call it what it is, that's these bodies. Rome does genetically modification of food, or they give her some things in the name of virus and shots and stuff like that, and they give the child Down syndrome, right? And so the child's salts and phosphates are set off. And some people may call it retarded. Now, a person who has not all his or her faculties and then can't comprehend that 2 and 2 is 4, they're excused. Right? But if you can count, go in the cabinet and get them peanut butter sandwiches that I told you not to touch, and get up on the chair to get it, and talk trash, you're responsible. Whosoever will, let him hear. Whosoever will, let him come. When he get caught, because he didn't play and got caught, he ain't made no damn mistake. And he don't lack understanding. He's caught.
All right.
Oh, you get the point? Well, see, I didn't know, I remember this. My mother used to also work at a bakery, right? And I remember my mom used to bring home these and it was his favorite things, particularly these little apple tarts, and it was those croissant things with cheese pockets and stuff like that. And you know the usual thing. Don't y'all mess with them stuff till I get, till I give them to you. Right? So mom was upstairs. So I goes in the kitchen. I grab what 2 hands to hold. Both. Now, so I slid behind the sofa. I was behind the sofa. Well, I was in heaven, really, I'm serious. I remember that just good. I was 5. Like it was yesterday. I didn't know which one to bite first. No, I'm serious. I mean, I was in it. I'm sitting behind the sofa. You know, you got your eyes closed and I hear the sofa move, but I didn't know that mom was moving the sofa. And I looked up at my mom, you've been in them cakes, right? And I was saying, it wasn't me. It was Marty. Talking about my brother, right? I got 2 hands full. I think I had 2 donuts in one hand, and I had that croissant in this other hand. I couldn't even talk. I had so much in my mouth. And I'm trying to convince my mom that I wasn't messing in things. And she was mad, but she was laughing at the same time because I was trying to be diplomatic. And I got all stuff all over my face and the hands full of stuff. Guilty as pie. Point of it is, we can't make excuses. The history, the facts, all of the world's politics and economics that operate in the contemporary world, not just here in the Western Hemisphere, is predicated on the Spanish Inquisition. The fall of the Red House in 1492, and the bond systems made up by the popes of Rome and members of the Roman Curia and the Bishopric of Rome to regulate conquered peoples and lands, called the Global World Trust, and they have what's called Sister QV trusts that are put on every living being who's declared dead by the popes of Rome. And all the instrumentalities is which the military operation of the Jesuit order called the U.S. Democracy Platform of Demons are sold to the world from the DTC on Water Street in New York called the stock market. Human trafficking. No metaphysical, super duper, dig beneath two pyramids in Egypt analysis. That's researchable facts. For anyone to keep on pretending that that information is not accessible or available are lying their keisters off. However, your institutions and monetary trading systems are built on that, and people are compromised. So they pretend not to know. They pretend not to understand. They're also lying. Are we clear? Because that's how the system works. It's not peripheral. It's not an idea. That is the system of trade of the stock market on Wall Street. Fact. Not opinion. Fact. So let us not talk about the mysteries of gods in heavens when you're not willing to talk about the unmysteries of human trafficking on earth. That's the source of all of our miseries. And it ain't no damn devil that did it. It's the bishopric, the priesthood, the popes of Rome, members of the Roman Curia, under unum sanctum and the doctrine of discovery. Almost midnight because those bonds are collapsing. And those who are not prepared are going to be eliminated. Mean like this. Their operation is this. They know that this stuff gets dangerous because the same people who've been marching and praying might start taking the position of choking someone who's been faking as a judge all these years, who've been robbing them. Whereas you're trying to negotiate with them with due process that they won't honor. Some guy or some woman sitting in the back of the trading venue, auction house, who thought it was a court, and it's an auction house, who finally starts figuring this stuff out. They may not be as reasonable. And might start thinking about getting their ride and their staff to comfort someone. This is why they're worried about middle-class Europeans' guns. Because they know that they're more aware of how this system actually works because they've been the beneficiaries of it. But now that they're being sacrificed, they're not going to go around marching and talk about, we're going to let them know we're somebody. They ain't going to do that now. They already know that everybody knows who everybody is. The only ones that don't know who they are is them Choctaw people. They say Choctaw Indians, which means chocolate people who don't know who the hell they are. That's what it means, just French for chocolate people. Whose estates they've been stealing for all these generations, who've been helping to fund their own enslavement and crying for salvation in vain. And wonder why their prayers have never been answered. They don't know because they're hypocrites. Whether they're ignorant or not, they're still responsible. Wait, brother. Just a reminder. Islam, brother.
Religious controversy.
Thank you very much, good man.
In this age,
can you stand up, please? As a matter of fact, can you come up here? You can do a moonwalk if you feel like it.
Religious controversy. In this age, there is still much religious controversy as to the right thing. Big and powerful ministers have come to the conclusion that something is wrong. Some say it is the Ten Commandments. Others say there is a lack of sincerity in the purpose of the churches. Still others think it is all worthless and not fit for the time it takes to attend them. However, whatever their final decision might be, it is certain they will make a change or rather try to make one. The fact of the matter is that they have always had only a reflection of the truth and not the real thing. Like one who holds up to the sun a mirror and casts a few of its diverted rays in a different direction, so have they done with the truth that is supposed to have come from the east. There are but few people who know what the truth is about man, and that few know that it is foolish to try to impart it to the ignorant. Although the ignorant has finished college, he is a fool right on, being trained to jump through a hoop. The longer he stays in the schools, the better he can jump, and the more vivid he will defend his jumping. From the east comes all light, but though the sun is hanging at high noon, the blind cannot see. The same as the Islamic creed from the east was brought to the Asiatics of America by the Prophet Noble Ali and offered to those who were sick at heart, tried for many years, yet they are blind and cannot see the light. Nor is the prophet trying to put new wine in old skins, for he knows that it will burst them. Still he has the only remedy for the nations, the remedy brought by Jesus, Muhammad, Confucius, and all other prophets, which remedy is truth. The nations do not want the truth, it is too stern, but until they accept it and find out where it is, there will continue to be religious controversy.
Yes. Now, when you look at the sun standing high noon, that's metaphorical. But when you look at it from the study of the universe, all right, let me give you 2 questions from the questionnaire. Who made you?
Allah.
Who is Allah?
Allah is the Father of the universe.
Can you see him?
No.
Where's the nearest place you can get him?
In the heart.
Mm-hmm. In your mother's womb, what is the first rhythm of the universe that anyone tests to see when a woman is operating according to the bouncing of the moon around the sun? That heartbeat, is that not true?
Yes.
So your question to Allah, the Father of the universe, is it not true that if you're studying Islam, you're studying the universe? Isn't that called cosmology?
Yes.
So if anybody's talking about that Islam has nothing to do with cosmology, they're lying, aren't they?
Yes.
Now, if you're, when I say you in general, adhere to that presentment that brings you back into the cultural status of your ancient mothers and fathers, why is it that some people get offended when you bring up that truth and you discover that they have not been teaching or studying that very same principle of the universe?
Expose it.
And so the sun stands at high noon. So if the sun stands at high noon, not unlike if you see this pedestal right here in relationship to that light, there's a shadow from these lights that cast to that degree. Are we correct? Now, in relationship to this light, you'll see some reflections here. The more you get to the center, the more the shadow will shoot down, and therefore all things around are revealed.
That's right.
That's how the universe works. And so therefore, in this age of Aquarius, with Uranus, with his high electrical charge, and Saturn, the great teacher, and Reaper, operating together, are any one of the human family excused for not seeing when there is no stone unturned?
No.
So they make an excuse. Is that excuse accepted?
No.
Ignorance of the law is no excuse. Almost midnight. You understand the principle? So the principal argument is over and over again in different organizations and orders, these different things have been told to these people, which means they've been given more than enough time to reform, to be willingly come on board and start enforcing divine law. They also have a right not to do so, which is a choice, isn't it? Isn't it? Just want to state that for the record. So while the sun stands at high noon, the people cannot see, or they're unwilling to see. Oh, all right, let's go ahead. Thank you, brother. All right. Go ahead, good brother.
There's only two positions that's habit and choice.
Yes.
So we got the bad habits, but we always got a choice.
And a habit is what? A chosen position. A habit meaning that as we breathe, we wouldn't necessarily call that habit. That's life urge. Reproduction, life urge. Smoking, that's habit. Drinking, that's habit. And whatever other vice people choose to do, don't start making excuses talking about this disease. That's choice. Now, and so we must start making the distinctions and taking responsibility for what we produce, what we choose to do, and accept the result. Why? Are we not made in the image and the likeness of our mother? Do we have belly buttons? Now, let's not talk opinions, beliefs. We ain't talking beliefs. We're talking first Stargate. Do you know a man that don't have a belly button? Does anybody in the room know a man that don't have a belly button? So therefore, can any man using his reasoning power accept the Adam and Eve story without some kind of qualification? That it has to be allegorical? Because Adam is sitting up there with a belly button talking about, God, where's my rib? You gave it to Eve, and she been mistreating me. And she been partying and shit. And I'm mad. You know, don't come on you can't get that off. The only proof that you have, that anyone in this room has, is that your mother. And Allah is a feminine name too, not masculine. So the only proof you got about Godship is your mother. And every argument after that is speculative, with all due respect. That does not put it down anyone's belief. We're talking about what can you prove distinguished from what you speculate. Right? We're males, right? We're sons, right? But we got these little buttons here. Them suckers don't feed nothing, never did. But they are reminders of who we came from. Now, that's a fact. Why is anyone upset? Why would anyone get upset with those facts? Which means, why would anyone try to defend a lie to defend the social operations that Rome has set up with the patriarchal system, that the popes of Rome is sitting on the chair of God, and then women have nothing to do with this, when she's the Stargate to them suckers too. You know, the point that I'm saying is people need to dump all the belief systems, all of them, and start clean. Starting with honoring their mothers and their fathers. And then we'll make all other debates thereafter based on predicated on established facts. Just something to think about.
I know you're close to ending. I have one thing that's always bugged me about the Bible. If Jesus existed and gave that sermon on the mountain, why is it they tell me about these fish and his loaves? They can never tell me what the sermon was about. Where is it?
The sermon?
Yeah, the sermon that he gave from the mountain.
Oh, sermon? No. Now, because then you go into what is called the Essene. Write this down, y'all. Essene, Essene, philosophies. Because actually the Sermon on the Mount is actually the activation of the spiritual glands, mainly referring to the medulla and the pineal and the pituitary, truthfully. And so the activation of these glands are really what you call, when they say anointing my head with oil, that is actually taking the energy that comes from the groin area or the lower chakras and works like a snake up the back. And this is where you get the sign of producers, where you get the medicine, where you get the wings, and then you see the two cords like a snake going up, which means the activation of the kundalini, then it activates the medulla, and it terminates at the pituitary, activates the thalamus that terminates over the nose right here, like on your forehead, right there, that's what that represents. And so that would be indicating what is called the Christ degree. And so at that time you become the Christ. Christ is not a single man, it is a degree. As an example, Yeshua said in the Septuagint, he says, as I am, all men shall be. What I have done, all men can do. And guess what? Some of you will even do greater works than I've done. What is he saying? He will show you that he's already reached the heart chakra. This is why they'll have his jalabo open and they'll show the heart. That means you got to the midpoint showing the heart chakra. Now you can see the upper world and the lower world. That's what that means. And he says some of you will even do greater works, which means the work is not done. However, he came to show the way, to demonstrate with his life to the sons of men. Who are the sons of man? Man is actually woman. Womb, man, and we are her sons. Therefore, we're the sons of God. At what point we don't understand this? But they don't want to acknowledge that woman is God, do they? Oh, so therefore, they want to keep playing these stupid games, and this is why we're in the shape that we're in. And that's the truth. Because undeniable, woman is the stargate. And when she fell, we fell. That's it. Let's get over ourselves. And so until we start cleaning this mess up without competing with each other, we're going to stay in the shape and get worse. Almost midnight, which means you don't have a lot of time. Not because, meaning we don't have the time to keep playing around with this. Why? Because Uranus and Jupiter is in the orbital plane on the same side with the Earth. And they're pulling. So you better stop worrying about some Nibiru. You better look at Uranus and Saturn and Jupiter. That, not just that, Uranus and Saturn ruling the Aquarian cycle. That means sun's at high noon. That's a signal. That means no stone unturned. So that has to mean in spiritual realm, or we're not just talking breath, that you're already in the higher part of the fourth dimension going into the fifth. So that means things in that realm, whether you like it or not, things cannot stay hidden. They can't. It has nothing to do with our opinion. We can like to think it does, it doesn't. It's in nature. Now, priesthood who know this is coming have to set up a new paradigm. That's why they need a new devil. And God says, because the old one don't work no more. They already know. See, so they're preparing for new deceptions.
The Marvel movies with all the planets lining up. They're foretelling.
Yeah, but they're not foretelling you anything. The heavens are foretelling you.
Yeah, I mean, they're putting it out, but you got to...
Look at the, not so much metaphor. When you look at Septuagint, and they're giving you signals on the culture of the planet, they will say the wise men, 3 wise men followed the stars, calculating the birth of the Son of God. They are talking about the transits of the sun, the equinoctial transits of the sun, the calculations of the universe. And what they were doing at that time was simply doing an ephemeral calculation of the birth of a champion. That champion is called Jesus. Contemporary, though there is no J in Eden.
That's right.
Do you understand? Or the transit of the sun. So they're telling you of a coming age. So now you got to get out of the anthropomorphic contemplation and get into the ephemerides calculation. Because now you're a man, you're no longer a child, you put away the childish things, which is anthropomorphic. Not wrong, anthropomorphic. So you're not going to be talking to Elmo, but you're not going to take Elmo from the baby. That's anthropomorphic. You're going to actually look at an ephemerides and do a calculation of the horoscope. So you're not going to talk just Ezekiel's wheel. You're looking at the angles of the lords around those houses of the 12 decibels. 12 disciples is mathematics. That's right there. The 333 all around, the master seal. And so the activation of that is simply what we call the Christ degree. You know, so Christ is anyone who accelerates and reaches those degrees. And Yahshua came to demonstrate it. That's it. It's that simple. You know, so let us not make this thing complex. And Rome not want him to teach the people, murder them. Because that's what they do. Because it ain't no mystery devil. It's Rome and the priesthood collectively. Anyway, go ahead, good brother.
Just going back to the adverse claim, there's a principle from Holy Bible, Luke chapter 16. It says, "And he said unto his disciples, There was a certain rich man which had a steward, and the same was accused unto him that he wasted his goods. And he called him and said unto him, How is it that I hear this? How is it that I hear this of thee? Give an account of thy stewardship, for thou mayest be no longer steward."
Hold in due course. I'm just making a correlation.
Then the steward said unto himself, What shall I do? For the Lord taketh away from me the stewardship. I cannot dig. Too bad, I am ashamed. I am resolved what to do, that when I am put out of the stewardship, they may receive me into their houses. So he called every one of his Lord's debtors unto him, and said unto the first, How much owest thou to my Lord? And he said, 100 measures of oil. And he said unto him, Take the bill, and sit down quickly and write 50. Then he said to another, And how much owest thou? And he said, 100 measures of wheat. And he said unto him, Take thy bill, and write 80. And the Lord commended the unjust steward, because he had done wisely. For the children of this world are in their generation wiser than the children of light.
Yes. Now you're talking in law, holder in due course is a steward. Now, the deal of it is that they must always deal in honor. What has happened in the world is that they have colluded with each other under the British Accreditation Registry, called the Bar Association, to steal the estates of men. And that's what the world suffers to this very day. And they've been doing what? Foreclosing as stewards or holder of due course over the estates of men, with the intentions of murdering the heirs before they become conscious. Now that's the fact. Now, question, who will intervene on their behalf? That's why the people are waiting on Jesus. You see the whole point? But their concepts about the one they call Jesus is incorrect. Because he did come. He says, I come amongst my own. They didn't want nothing to do with me. They say, I come amongst my own, and they receive me not. So they want to follow Rome. So, almost midnight, Rome was liquidating their estates. They're in battle, and they start talking about training. You should have been training before the battle. This is why we cannot stop all the bloodshed. We can limit it, but it's according to how sincere the people are, because it actually is already in their DNA, and it actually can be activated and can be woken up like that. Not based on what you say really, but based on their level of sincerity. Because nature herself will immediately attach them to the Akashic records. They don't need to be educated, they need to be imprinted. just like an energy pack, and they just simply know. This is where the Bible says, just open up your mouth and I will speak for you. That's what it really means. It's imprinting. So they think that the education is only by them going to college, for some period of time under Rome's order, getting miseducated by Rome and think they're going to come out into the world when the first school is the womb. And their mothers could protect them from the door if she would render unto Caesar what is Caesar's. This is called the virgin birth. That means without the contamination of Rome. It doesn't mean that she doesn't have a seed. And so don't get caught in that thing where Joseph was out there cutting the grass and the Holy Ghost was peeking through the window checking out Mary's feasters. And so Joseph went out in front cutting the grass and the Holy Ghost was knocking on the back door. Joseph out there cutting the grass and stuff. You know, and then the Holy Ghost went in and committed adultery with Mary, you know what I mean, and stuff like that. And then Jesus popped up. You know, it's not really what it is. And of course, you also know he was never been charged with adultery. Well, go ahead.
20 minutes.
20 minutes? All right. Any other questions? The point of it is, and the basis of the collage of this dispensation that we're making tonight is to make you aware that I know that many of you know it, and I know that maybe some of you don't, that Rome, and when you say Rome, you're talking the Vatican, you're talking the District, Westminster, London, and you're talking Washington, D.C. in collusion are operatively plotting and executing genocidal programs to kill people off. They're not separate in their agenda, they're together in their agenda. They're liquidating almost anybody that got a mortgage whatsoever. They're attacking the estates to pay their private debt. If the people start arguing money, they're already off track. If they start arguing payments, they're off track. They must start arguing for that promissory note, and they must do it under adverse claim. All clear? And they must be proactive and stop being reactive. Are we clear? All right, give me the mic.
I feel compelled as we do your grace, but I'm going to be devil's advocate
Go ahead.
for the people. We're dealing with an enemy. We're dealing with
Name the enemy.
demons.
So now let's name, yes, now name the demons.
The demons are the people of the Vatican, the people of the papistry, those that are representing Rome.
Roman Curia.
Roman Curia.
Let's be more specific.
Roman Curia.
Let's be more specific. The owners of the United States Service Corporation and its operatives and its de facto pseudo officers who have been claiming to be representatives of the United States Republic, but are members of the U.S. democracy platform, are doing this. The clergy in all of the poor communities who have been telling the people that they've been submitting and delivering the people to Jesus are really working with the Romans, submitting the people to Rome. Fleet Street, England are generating the orders for all fraudulent instruments called private commercial paper for the Federal Reserve operatives on the dark side of Illuminati and Skull and Bones, etc. The United States Service Corporation is a military arm of the Jesuits, which is a war machine and not a country, that are enforcing color of law against people who they designated as colored people who are targeted heirs of the estate. Rule from the Vatican and the Bishopric of Rome. That is the unum sanctum system, their operations together. meaning that in general, while we do not name what you would call individuals, you must be more specific in naming the living men and women who are the owners and operators of these entities all the time.
We're in bed with a den of thieves. Why should we expect them to be honorable in any way?
Exactly. Therefore, it is incumbent upon us, who are the heirs, to honor our mothers and fathers and hold them to their charge in spite of whatever they may claim. Meaning that Rome is not going to do right because Rome never intended to do right. However, what does that have to say about you? And what are you doing? Are you active or are you passive? Have you been dedicated to the honor of your mothers and fathers and thus your estate? Or have you waited till Rome push you into a corner and you got polka dot wallpaper because the fan's running heavy and now you want to get active? Meaning you're in the ring now you want to discuss jabbing? Well, you know, how am I supposed to square my feet? While you're discussing, you get peppered.
They foreclosing, and now you want to get involved with the movement.
That's the problem. And crash learning, unless you're super spiritual, well, most people don't work. You get ahead a little bit, but it's dangerous to be passive and not active. And it's called like when the sun stands at high noon and people start recognizing that there are no secrets and no stone unturned, now everybody's scrambling, but many of them are still in that mentality of fronting. They're still fronting. And they have to get beat around a little bit to see that that fronting doesn't work. You've got to what? You can't serve two masters. You're going to have to decide whether you're serving Rome or whether you're honoring your mothers and your fathers.
Feudal or colonial.
That's what it is. Because Rome is stealing your estate. Now, fact, we've been serving Rome. We've been transacting business in Roman names. We've been claiming Rome's dogmas as religion. Knowingly. It has failed us severely. Some have willingly turned their hearts back to their mothers and fathers, and some because their keisters are getting kicked. And they lost a lot of weight, and it ain't Jane Craig. Are we clear? Now they want quick pill fix, because they're used to pills. Let me take this quick pill and fix it. They don't work like that. You must be sincerely active and not passive. And we gotta fix this by just keeping it, put it this way. You know how like sometimes people keep saying it's complex, it's not complex. It's really simple. It's just that people keep making it complex.
Last thing, why is the language we speak and what we use in our writ so important?
Because culture is in the language. And the reason they have trained the people, particularly in the North, in connotative linguistics, is so that when the people begin to feel the pressure, when they start recognizing that their estates are being liquidated, they're going to start trying to counter-argue. And as soon as they open their mouths, they're declared incompetent because they can't read. Anyway, I want to thank you all for coming out to the House of Reawakening Minds. Go on the sites, Dr. Ayala. Would you want to update the people on the sites, ETC, and also for the assistance that may be needed by the people's donations to keep the house open for the people? Because we will and have been dealing with controversial issues that many people keep skipping around. Because we don't sell beliefs here, and we don't promote beliefs here. We promote remedy. We promote recourse. We promote the enforcement of the Constitution for the United States as commanded by Prophet Muhammad, who came to help us regain our lost estate by taking responsibility. So we'll deal with those issues along that line. If you want to deal with police systems, go with someone else who's selling hot dogs, because we don't deal with that. That's with all due respect. We deal with facts, history, law, jurisprudence.
Well, we want to welcome everyone. We want to thank you for coming out and tuning into House of Reawakening Minds as we strive to be a holistic center for spiritual grounding, free thought, self-discovery, and more science, an awakening experience for all ages. Guys, put your hands together for Taj Tarik Bey. Put your hands together for you.
Now, again, the reason why we posted this talk tonight, almost midnight, is because you need to pay attention to actually ephemeralities, the movement of the planets, as above, so below. It's reflected. And so that you're not caught by surprise. And also so that you not be caught with many who've been faking spirituality and are going to find themselves disappointed when nature kicks their keisters. Because you've been given more than enough chance to honor your mothers and fathers. We don't need to debate it, but the masses at large have failed to do so. And while they've been lazy and passive, Rome is liquidating their estates. So expect a lot of people to be on the curb. And you know, like when the Bible says, woe until that time, and hope there's no pregnant people, no pregnant women. That's what it's talking about. Because Rome's going to be sitting these people out on the curb. Now, the deal of it is, you can activate the law and start checking Rome. And you can choose not to and suffer the consequences. And so with that, I'll say the closing, honor your mothers and your fathers that your days may be longer upon the earth, land. I don't care what Reverend tells you. I don't care what the pastor told you. The book says land. That's your estate. And a reclamation of your estate is called reversion of estate. With that, I yield the floor and say have a grand evening.
And before we close, we want to remind everyone tomorrow, starting at 10 a.m. from 10 to 6 here at the House of Reawakening Minds, Abdullah Mosley Talib Bey is doing
Abdullah Talib Mosley Bey
is doing a 8-hour class on etymology right here. A full-fledged, all-out, no holds barred, rocking and rolling etymology class. History of the word, the seed of the word. Strongly recommend. It will be $35 at the door, but it is a bomb of a class and an incredible opportunity. Put your hands together one more time for Taj Tarik Bey.